Good evening, everybody. Sorry for the late start tonight. I got home late and just a bunch of stuff to do. Superior Blaze, how you doing? Thank you for your Twitter attention and the rest. Just give me 1 second here. I need to... Sadly, the music's gonna go away for a second, but I just gotta change a couple things. Alright. No excuses. Yeah, my voice sounds a little, at least to me it sounds a little bit off. That is likely a function of the Twitch meetup yesterday, which I definitely enjoyed. I've never been crazy about photographs, but obviously quite a few of those. Stayed quite late. Missed the last bus, or the last SkyTrain, so I had to take a bus which wound up going to the wrong place and got home very late. And then, how's it going, Jazzpoo? Your kindness on Twitter over the photos that I'm already a little dodgy over. It was greatly appreciated. No, it's all good. I need to stop being camera shy, but definitely my better traits are my voice. So, Superior Blaze, thank you very much for the host. But yeah, so the extended time away from home for the Twitch meetup, and then in addition to that, I had to do some research, which I tried to do before the meetup, but didn't get very far. So I went. Oh, thank you, Jazzpoo. That is definitely not the first word that came to mind, but I appreciate it. But yeah, so long story short, like I had this research that was due this morning. As it turned out, it was well received, but I've got more questions that I need to deal with tomorrow. And basically spent the rest of the night trying to get through the booze and write something, that my prof will... I don't know if they count as my professor. Well, yeah, I guess they're your prof if you're a research assistant. But, anyways, had to spend the better part of the evening writing on standard essential patents, which is not exactly the most exciting topic that I could be dealing with in econ. Thank you, Jazzpoo. It's definitely not something to be proud of. It's more of a necessity brought on by probably a careless approach to time management. But it's neat, actually. So the one thing, I won't spend too much time talking about this. The one thing that was interesting about it is there's a paper, I think he's the most recent Nobel Prize winner, Jean Triol and Josh Lerner, who's, I think, an economist at Harvard. They just published a paper. So they've had this working paper for a while on standard essential patents, and these are basically patents that are brought into some kind of a standard. So if I create like the 3G standard and there's a number of patents that cover the functionality, and the standard says you have to have this functionality, that's great news for the patent holder, right? They've now got a new market. And there's a bunch of problems that run into this in terms of people creating holdup and so on and so forth. So I had to read the Trill paper. Now, he is very good at what he does, but what he does is very complicated, and I did just graduate, right? So I'm not at the point where I can sit down and just do what Jean Triol does. But what really interested me was in the meeting with the prof, she was pushing me to get a little bit more out of these materials. And so rather than just starting to take the paper for granted, I started going through the material and I discovered it's not like what I'm about to say, like, don't take it as like I just broke this paper or something like that, but it's very interesting that, in my opinion, there's a couple of, I don't know if I'll call them rhetorical techniques or just a couple of assumptions that go through the paper, and if you're not reading carefully, they seem completely innocuous, but they're very inconsistent. Like, there's a big gap that isn't very adequately answered on that topic. So, again, I'm hoping that wasn't the Kappa shots talking, but that's how I got to spend my morning. Akakadak, how's it going? Thank you for the shoutouts. Thank you, everybody, for stopping by. It's definitely a weird day today. So I tried to get a little bit of sleep after sending that, I guess, summary, I'd call it. I had to read a bunch of courts. Actually, okay, by the way, this is one thing that really interests me. If you think I'm boring or talk too much, I read a bunch of like court rulings on a lot of these standard essential patent cases. It is so funny to read what some of the justices are writing in this case. It's like, you can tell that they are getting really fed up with like Microsoft and Motorola and like Apple and Samsung and all of this stuff. So that was sort of amusing. But I mean, again, like, reading court rulings is not exactly my goodness. Thank you all for the shoutouts. Let me just turn my do not disturb mode on. I can't believe I've had the academic speak anymore. I have to dealing with you. This is true, Jespu. But this is my stream, so I behave myself on my stream. But yeah, anyways, like, so the court documents are not the most compelling reading, but they are kind of funny when the justice is very obviously frustrated with what they have to deal with. But yeah, I'll be honest with you, like, if somebody said to me, you know, do you want to do work on standard essential patents? My answer would be no. But I am getting paid for this work, so it's good. Kite260, how's it going? I missed the message that you'd sent in the Team Panda Slack, but I hope you're feeling alright. There's not much else to talk about for the XP stream. Thank you, everybody who watched that. I hope that was a good enough proxy for my stream, to at least watch other people having fun. Oh no, the Clara emotes. Oh, I keep forgetting every time I click off the screen, the music goes away, so I'll leave it. I actually quite like this game soundtrack. Yeah, I had fun. I liked it. I think Clara did a good job with the organization. Well, obviously she didn't work alone, but obviously she put a lot of effort into getting it together. It was nice to have the developers there. I actually didn't think she was going to get them, but I was wrong. Ran into some absolutely fascinating people. It was really fun to hang out with everyone. Finally got to meet Miss Ariella, who was very friendly, and I felt bad because I had to tweet at her from across the room for half the evening because I was locked in. Hey Lex1316, how you doing? You people and your emotes. Alright, let's talk about Endless Space. So this is the first game by Amplitude Studios and that I played from this studio. They have later gone on to make Dungeon of the Endless and Endless Legend. This is actually kind of an interesting... this is an interesting game to me because when I first played it, I didn't like it. And I think one of the reasons for that was that this game doesn't have that good of a tutorial, in my opinion. This is actually a complaint about a lot of Amplitude games that I have. They're good. I think they're very well designed and they're very interesting. But they really make you work to try and actually have fun. Like, I still haven't been able to get into Endless Legend. But Endless Space, I feel it's been a while since I've gone into this, but I think I can. I think I can probably figure things out. So it gives you lots of options in terms of how it's going to set. I'm just going to go for the default settings. I'll stick with the Spiral Galaxy. I'll go for 4 Empires. I could make it a larger game. And then I'll just do normal game speed and difficulty. Now, I titled the stream Space Capitalist because we will be playing as the United Empire. Well, I could also choose the Sheridan. Yeah, let's do Sheridan, actually. So, oh, hang on. They've changed. So it used to be that the Sheridan was actually basically the United Empire all over again, but this doesn't seem to be the case anymore. It'd be kind of fun to do the Harmony. The Vaulters, I believe, you only get for having Dungeon of the Endless, and they have added a new civilization creator. But 100, Jesus. See, I'm Canadian, so Fahrenheit, it doesn't, like, I need to think for a minute before I figure that out, but I know enough to say that please get better. So yeah, I haven't played all of these civilizations, and there's actually a few in here that I think would be really fun, but I'm going to conquer the galaxy with supply-side economics. So in this case, we've got the United Empire. All of this stuff is just pure flavor text. So home planet type, Terran, diplomatic alignment, evil, gameplay, colonialist, main, victory type, economic, military. So there's a couple of things in here. I don't believe diplomatic alignment will do anything as far as interacting with other groups. I could be wrong in that. Gameplay and main victory type are suggestions for play, although I would suggest that you're probably going to get more of that through looking at the traits. The empire is theoretically under the control of a central monarchy. However, the rate of expansion means that society cannot be ruled that way effectively. Effectively. In fact, the systems of the colonial diaspora are colonized by disintegrated corporations who work hand in hand with the Ministry of Investment and Development. The Ministry of Security is involved as well due to the need for native and or alien pacification, security forces, defense, and surveillance. Yeah, Kate, definitely. I have every faith that you will take Alex1316. Clearly, I was going to say, as a diplomatic alignment evil, I just had to read an interview with Syria's president. Oh, not a problem, Kite626. Actually, I appreciate the I appreciate the reclassification. I just wanted to say, like, all that I mean by that is, if I failed to respond correctly originally, it's just because I need to just work it out. But yeah, that's everybody's already told you what they think of that. But I'm glad to hear that you're gonna get that checked. Please take care of yourself. So we'll talk a little bit about what this faction's about. You gain, if you want to build your own faction or you want to distinguish between the other ones, you can see the traits right here. So Enwy Fusion Plants is a technology that you begin with. In this case here, it just gives you refineries, which kind of orient you towards building industry, which I like. Businessman is a 10% increase in dust on the planet. In this case, it's a little bit like the Dune books, which is there isn't a currency in the game. Dust is a little bit like spice. Entrepreneurs is +1 dust production per person on a planet. Off to bed. Have a wonderful night. Thank you very much, Akadak. I'm definitely trying to, to get back on track today. So I wanted to do something new, just because in this case, like, there's no expectations. I'm definitely feeling a little bit sluggish today, and then I don't think I'll play this game very well because it's been a very long time, but we'll still have fun together. So I hope you have a great night, and I'll catch up with you later. I need to double check our libraries and figure out what we can play again. I know I mentioned it, and then I never actually followed up with you on that, but I will fix that this week because the research should be dying down. So one of the things that I like about this one is they are fairly good at creating dust, or generating dust. There's strong alloys, so plus 40% health on ships, which is helpful in this case. Just, you know, as long as you can get that marginal benefit in the combat, you're able to, one, not have to spend as much producing extra ships to replace the ones that get lost, but also they give you that edge in terms of having, you know, 2 equally balanced fleets, and then the United Empire's military strength is enough to push you over the edge. Next is Fearless Warriors, so 25% defense per person on a system. This basically means that you're harder to invade. It's not necessarily something that I put too much weight on because, of course, we're like House Rose. We're going to conquer people. We're not going to be conquered. You own this game? Well, Superior Blaze, I hope you enjoy it. Dust Impaired is a plus 50% abilities cost on a hero. Now, basically, you've got heroes that can use special abilities, which will give you an edge in combat. Now, I almost never use the abilities, so Dust Impaired is actually not that bad for me to have. I might try and change that around. This is probably a bit more of an experimentation run, so perhaps I should try a couple of the heroes' dust abilities. But in this case, this is the only drawback to the faction. And finally, Hull Architects, plus 10 ship XP building on Empire. So I think it's also a fairly good starting faction. But again, you kind of want to pick things based on your playstyle. The Sofuns are a science-oriented one. The Hisho and the Cravers are definitely very military-oriented. The Amoeba are actually a pretty interesting group. I find them a little difficult to play. But here it's just going to be single player. I won't bother messing around with any of the advanced settings, and we'll start the game. I am also doing this one because it's a 3D game. Oop.
They're not so united, the planets of this united empire. It's more a gaggle of unruly imperial corporations run by insolent dukes. But their armies are strong, their economy is efficient, and their ships are powerful. I fear that they may be the ones who will finally unite or dominate the galaxy. They'll turn it into a shrine to the gods of commerce, a profane church with Emperor Maximilian Zelivas as its high priest.
Actually, a neat little tidbit. So you have where they talk about shrines to the gods of commerce. You can have this idea of currency and well, actually, I gotta double check the facts on that. I'll save that for another cast because there's one counter example I had to what I was about to say. Never mind. So one of the reasons why I wanted to do this game is because it's 3D, so I'm going to be pushing the capacity of my, my limited stream a little bit. I don't think it should be enough of a problem because there's only 1 or 2 action-ish elements to the game, but it'd be interesting if you notice that it's becoming a little unwatchable, or if there are some major drawbacks to the video. Please let me know that, because I am doing a little bit of an experiment in terms of what I can get away with streaming. With that in mind, if I can get some stats work done, I'm going to start something I've wanted to do for a while next Monday. I think the best way for me to do that is I will put out a tweet saying what it's going to be and at what time. I will make sure that I commit the time, because it's something I'm really looking forward to doing, and I've either been too lazy or I've kind of fallen apart in terms of how I'm gonna handle it. But there's a game I've wanted to do and a discussion I've wanted to have about that game for quite some time, so That'll probably be next week. It's not going to have anything to do with 3D, so this is just kind of preparing for other things. One of the other things I wanted to do this summer as well was to get in touch with some friends of mine. I have a lot of friends who don't play games, but are like interesting in other senses. So, for instance, I knew somebody who was a nurse. Now, we're basically not on speaking terms anymore. So the original idea was to get them to play Surgeon Simulator on stream, but that's not necessarily going to turn out. But with all my other friends, you know, they each have interesting traits. They're all, you know, neat people to be around. So I thought it'd be kind of interesting to have a first exposure to a game that's somewhat related to, you know, to what I know them for, and then, you know, stream that for you guys. You can see the reactions. There's a side of me that would really like to subject somebody to Outlast, but I don't want it to just be, you know, hey, we're all going to make fun of my friend being terrified by Outlast. Like, it has to be, I need a little bit more for that. But I've got some games in mind, I've got some people in mind, and that would mean very likely that I would be doing them in locations that have better internet connections. So I thought I'd start pushing out the boundaries a little bit, just seeing how my personal setup right now handles a little bit more of a graphically intensive game. And you know, the next step will be to do something with higher bandwidth and just see how that handles. Yeah, absolutely, Red Pain. Plus the combat, I was going to say, I love the combat scenes in this game. So I've spent some time slagging the Amplitude tutorials. I'm not actually going to go through it here. I mean, it's better than nothing, but I'm not going to let them off the hook for that. I definitely think they could have done a better job with the tutorials, in my opinion. So let's talk a little bit about what's going on in the game. First of all, really wonderful looking game. This is made in the Unity engine. This is obviously well before Unity 5, but just a really, in my opinion, very nice looking game. So we chose a spiral galaxy. You'll see that reflected. The Disk Galaxy looks a little bit different. And this game is one of these 4X style games. Unlike Endless Legend, which maybe has a bit more of a comparison to the Civilization series, this is very much its own beast. So you'll notice that there's no hexes for me to run around on. Now, one of the first things that I do here is I get some exploration done. One priority that I have is to colonize. And then the next is to go to basically different systems and find as much as I can. Obviously, the more information that you get early on in the game, the better decisions you can make in terms of how you expand. Yes, I'm running the Disharmony expansion as well. So the biggest thing here is that my system is not that bad, actually. This is what I use for all of my schoolwork, so I did get a fairly decent computer for that. But in the end, like, I'm taking all of this computing capacity on my computer and I'm sticking it through this tiny little tube that is my inexpensive internet connection. Well, I don't think it's inexpensive personally, but it is less expensive than the other alternatives that I have in Canada. So I'm not too worried about what happens to my computer. I'm a little bit more worried about what the compression scheme that I'm using because of my limitations does. But I mean, again, we'll have some fun with this. We'll watch me die terribly in this game. And again, in my opinion, the first thing that you want to do in a game like this is get as much information as you can to be able to make some decisions in terms of your expansion. The earlier and the faster you expand, the better off you're going to be. You do suffer approval problems from that strategy, but I'll hopefully be able to get around them. You do start with a colony ship, so unlike games like, well, I guess in like Civilization, you start with a settler so you can build your first city, but in this one it actually gives you the ability to have more than one colony at the beginning as long as you can explore. And I specifically chose these two locations. A yellow sun is likely to have a planet that I can inhabit right away. Also possible that a white dwarf has it, but less likely than the yellow sun. Yellow sun is obviously the sort of thing that, you know, you and I are used to living under. If I constructed additional pylons, my computer would run faster. How's it going, Ace Gaming? The reason I'm choosing these two areas are because of their stars, so you get a bonus for exploring them. Now, the drawback is this is just a scout and a colony ship, so there could be some things that maybe are oriented towards combat that in the end I'm not necessarily going to get any benefit from. But I kind of figure it's, the chance that I get something really good off of that outweighs the possibility of me wasting a minor military bonus, because in the end I'm usually going to eclipse that bonus through other production in the early game anyway. So it says titanium exploitation. That's just from the original technology that we had. This game also has heroes, so I'm going to close these down just so I can look at them in the academy. And there is actually some story to this game. One thing that interests me is that so I knew this game is just a standalone 4X space strategy game. What interests me is that the voiceover narration is similar to the trailer for Endless Legend. And so it definitely seems like, whether they intended it at the beginning or whether they have expanded because of the success, but it does seem like they're actually trying to tell a very consistent story in terms of the planet of Auriga and sort of the impact on the broader galaxy. I don't know what that story is, by the way, but in some ways it almost seems like civilization on Auriga is sort of seeded by this Valter faction. So I don't know, it's interesting. I don't follow the story stuff as much in Endless Space, but I do need to talk more on my streams, so I'm always happy to do the story stuff when I'll speak with you good people. Just nuke the pylons and watches my system shut down? This system's not shutting down. He's pulling another all-nighter. Get me the Kappa shots. Chronicles of the Lost. The galaxy is vast, and its secrets too many to count. Given the many civilizations that have risen and fallen since the advent of intelligent life, it is certain that great knowledge, vast riches, and gruesome tales will await the hand of the intrepid voyager. As space is further explored and more systems become homes for new colonists, bit by bit the secrets of the old peoples will see the light of day. What more is there to learn of the Endless and their allies and enemies? Only time, and dust, and tenacity will bring the answer. Alright. So you can have 3 active heroes at the beginning of the game. In reality, you can really only afford 1. I can't actually afford any right now, but what I mean, like in this case, it'll cost me 20 to recruit my first hero, and then it will cost me additional resources to bring in. Like, it'll cost me, I think, 70 for my second hero. So basically, you kind of want to choose your hero wisely. You get some indicators in terms of these icons here. I tend to like the expansion-oriented ones, so I think this amoeba is probably the most likely. So again, they give you some lore here, which is just purely for your benefit. Actually, we'll read it when I hire him. But I particularly like corporate here. This gives you an idea in terms of the benefits that you can earn off of this. But basically, this is oriented towards building up infrastructure on a planet, so I become more prosperous. I can build more ships. So again, do I have an admiral who's leading my fleet? No, but I've got an amazing, huge fleet that just face rolls everything that it runs into, so I don't need a pilot. As with any of these 4X games, you have technology. Now, what is kind of interesting is if you compare the technology tree of Civilization 5 to, let's say, the technology tree of Beyond Earth, you can definitely see the impact that this game had on Firaxis development of Beyond Earth. I won't go so far as to say that they copied them, but in this case here, they kind of gave, I think, a little more interesting way of handling technology trees. Again, you have sort of your main branches, so there's applied science, galactic warfare, diplomacy and trading, and exploration. So you sort of get some ideas about what all of these increases are going to be about. In this case, I want to start with Xenology because this is going to unlock these luxury resources. The luxury resources are going to increase my approval rating, which means I can start playing around a little bit more with things like taxes. Holy God! We have got a Jesse Quill raid on our hands, and I was apparently completely ignoring it for at least a minute. What am I gonna do with this? Alright. So we've got Jesse Quill, Robbie Niner, Enclave Fake Soldier, Sphinx 15, Kyra, Custom Games, That Anime Girl, Moblord, Andrew Arcade, so Andrew Arcade, I'm sorry, I will not call you by Clara's new definition. I hope you don't mind. Loki82, Ace Gaming LPs, who I believe I've said hello to you already, and Cyan Princess 619, and BLT NJ. Jesse Quill, thank you so much for that, host. An enormous host, by the way. Much larger than this channel is used to, except when Jesse Quill raids us. I hope you're having a good stream. I popped in for a very brief second. I didn't say hi because I was going to do this stream myself. But it looked like you were doing some layouts and making things pretty. Somebody just followed. I'm going to have to kill the music for a second because it looks like my alert didn't work properly. Toga Shinzero. Sorry for the butchering your pronunciation. Thank you very much for the follows. I'm sorry, guys. I was at the I should introduce myself, but I will first explain why I'm a little lethargic and I'm completely out to lunch. I was at the Vancouver EXP meetup, and then I immediately went home to do research, which was an all-nighter. Vinny3335, thank you very much for the follow as well. Good lord, Jesse Quill, such a friend of the stream. I'm going to sing her praises in a minute too, but I'm going to give you my excuses. So I was at the Twitch meetup in Vancouver, went home, did this research all-nighter, got the thing in on time. I think it was like 7 o'clock in the morning when I finally sent this thing on. Found something I was... Sphinx 15. Oh, or Sphinx. I want to call you Sphinx. Love my lexicon. Thank you, guys. But yeah, I'm suffering the consequence. That Anime Girl, thank you very much. Oh, such good people. But yeah, so I am not 100% today, but I am a member of Team Panda. If you haven't seen me in Jesse Quill's channel already, I'm sorry for that. I do try to hang out as often as I do. For those of you who don't know what Team Panda is, just take a quick peek above the stream title. Basically, it's a team that was set up by Seriously Clara. It's the place I go if I'm looking for some easy entertainment on Twitch. I know that's easy for me to say because I'm part of it, but it is a group of people who have to put in the work to get there. They're very supportive of each other. I think you guys have already seen that with Jesse Quill. I mean, she is certainly the upper bound of the quality of streamers, but you have people like Weebro, you've got people like Miss Ariella, Leet Paste is streaming right now, you've got Kite260 who's in this chat, you've got the Sleepbringer, Torjin. Actually, I'm going to get in trouble if I don't list off all of the names right now. So I'll maybe just keep it there. Oh, I also have to say Black Dahlia just because he's given so many people for followers on this channel. But, and again, please do not take that as an indication of thinking less of anybody else who's on there. Because I'm already thinking of all the other names that I should have said. But basically, it's a team full of people who mutually support each other, and if you take a look at everybody's Twitters, like, these are people who are just really fantastic to be around. I consider myself very lucky to be on a team like this. So, oh, we've got late raiders. Messed it up, tried. Also added your own emotes and messed it up. I had a good English teacher. Thank you. Okay, actually, so I should let you guys know that I was thinking a bit about this because I occasionally hear from some friends in terms of my ability to write and my ability to speak. I think part of it is the fact that I watched British comedies, or listened to British comedies when I was growing up. So there's this old British kind of TV series, but I knew it more from these audiobooks that my dad would put on called Rumpole of the Bailey. And he just has this extremely elaborate way of speaking. I would say eloquent, but like the books make it sound quite inflated. I don't want to say pompous because he is a lawyer, so he has a very technical way of speaking. But if you want to get, if you want to get better at English, if you want to learn some fancy words, then you can You can listen to Rumple of the Bailey. I don't know. It's like, I don't even know how good it is, because like I just remember growing up with it, and like this other show called like Yes Minister, and like these were old shows when I was listening to them. So like if you look at it now, it's comical how bad the production value on it is. But because the British just have a really wonderful way of saying things, I've been spoiled with this vocabulary. So thank you very much, guys. All right, I guess I should explain what I'm doing in this game. So, in this case, I chose for the luxury resources just because in the end that's going to improve my approval. Higher approval is going to increase my production. And so in the end, I'm going to be able to produce more. That can mean either improvements that further increase my approval, which means that I can put more resources either towards taxing the population or towards producing warships to conquer. In my opinion, there's really no reason not to get that early approval boost. I don't have a lot of options here right now. I would have gone for heavy isotope refineries anyway, because this is increasing my production capacity. Oh, actually, I'm not going to do that yet. I'm going to start by choosing an exploitation. So this is a little bit similar to Civilization, where you're going to be picking what resource tiles your workers will pick. So if I work on, let's say, some grasslands, I'm likely to produce more food, but not very much industry. If I go into the woods, I'm probably going to be generating more industry than food, and so on and so forth. The desert tends not to do anything. So, watch an old British program called The In-Betweeners. I've heard of The In-Betweeners, but I haven't watched it. You learn wanker, twat, so on. Yeah, British television is great. If you guys want a modern one, so, I mean, my thesis was probably somewhere in the realm of what you could call political economy. I'm reading a book on the 2012 American election, although I should note I'm from Canada, so I don't have a lot of American political opinions. But, so this is very much kind of a system chalk sort of thing to watch, but there is a really good British comedy series with absolutely volcanic profanity, which is great, called The Thick of It. There's also a movie that they made called In the Loop. There's a character in there called Malcolm Tucker, who is the Scottish communications director. That is some good stuff. You're not necessarily going to learn you're not going to learn the Queen's English watching that show, but I think it's hysterical, and you'll learn some absolutely fantastic insults on people. Do I like the Total War series? I have to admit, I've not actually played it. I played a little bit of Rome 2 when they gave it on a free weekend, but not something that I could say nothing that I could build an informed opinion off of. They look interesting. And I did a little bit of work in class, like I was a research assistant for a prof in classics. So it's definitely a period of history that I'm interested in, but I don't have a lot that's interesting to say about anything most of the time, but particularly about the Total War series. But I haven't avoided it for any particular reason. It's just not something I've wound up playing. So, for those of you who haven't noticed, I'm completely nerdy about these things. One thing that really interested me about Endless Space once I started paying closer attention to this game was I was thinking about what we learn in macro, and generally when we have our macro models, you have labor and you have capital. And then there's sort of some determinations in terms of, your balance between how much labor, how much capital you have, or how many machines you have and how many workers you have on them. If you have lots of workers and only one machine, adding another worker is not going to make things that productive. Alternatively, if you have lots of machines but only one worker, again, adding another machine is not really going to add that much to your productive capacity. You want to have a balance between these two things, but you can also put some, like, the parameters in terms of how that relationship should work is sort of what empirical work is about. You're trying to estimate what these values are based off of these theoretical models, which are very interesting and have a lot of very good reasoning behind them. But in the end, you do want to take it to data. You do actually want to find out how the world works. So I've always been very interested in these games in terms of what they do to reflect that. In this case, you do have a straight up labor capital decision to make. So you've got Right now I've got sort of half the capacity of this planet. That's why I'm building this Evolved Soils improvement, because right now I can focus on expanding that population, and then once I've filled up the population, I can go and I can build up some industry or something like that. Basically, I'm going to have more people to produce that work. Whereas again, if I put all of those resources towards building those industry points, I'm still going to get some industry points. But the big thing about this game is that you do have, like, there's going to be some differences in terms of how much you generate based entirely on your population. So it's the first time I've really examined that in a game, but they actually do a fairly good job of making sure that you're making intelligent and somewhat credible decisions, like decisions that you might make if you were running things in the real world, because the real world has spaceships and things like that. But that's just a nerdy little aside that I thought was kind of interesting, because, you know, I have to think along these lines in class. Oh, not a problem, Jesse Quill. I will say it. I am always just a little bit happier whenever I see you in the channel, because I feel like I harass you a lot in your channel, and then whenever you stop by, I kind of like put everything on hold, and then I just start talking and like don't do anything interesting. Oh, there's one other thing that I forgot to do on this game, but yeah, it's always really nice to see you here. So never say sorry. Always happy to have you. But one of the things that I had meant to do was play around with the slider here. So one of the things that I normally do, especially when I'm playing a group like the United Empire, I try to work this bar so that I'm just still making some cash, but that I am improving that my production's where it needs to be. So like right now, I'm going to be finishing the Evolved Soils in 2 turns. Now, one thing I can do is I can raise this bar up. Presumably I can raise this bar up. Notice that as far as this production is concerned, it's not necessarily changing the number of turns. So in this case, I could actually get away with just having some more money. Alternatively, like, I can still just try and put everything into production here. In this case, I do want to build a little bit of a base, so I'll stick with the original 40% tax rate. But what I'm generally going to do here is move this down so that I've got a very high approval rating, and so I can build up my industry a little bit faster. There's also a point where you can generate so much money that you can afford to have like a 0% tax rate, and you're just making so much from your improvements that you don't need to worry. But in this case, it wasn't necessarily bad that I didn't change that, because now I'm able to hire my hero, and this I think is a pretty interesting little mechanic that they added into the game. Well, I say added into the game, but an innovation that they made as far as the 4X genre is concerned. So you can assign this to a fleet. I don't really have any meaningful fleets, but I will assign them to the system. So what's nice here is that, let's say I wasn't interested in his ability to build up my infrastructure. Oh, I did say I was going to read this guy's biography, didn't I? Dundub Lakai LDR-32, an entity that likes to federate and bring beings together. Diplomacy and exploration are the natural interests for Lakai LDR-32. Collaborative work, group cooperation, and overcoming obstacles are the things that make it happy. Keenly sensing its individuality since it ingested dust, it is almost fervent in its desire to explore and unite peoples. That sounds like the opposite of what we want in my empire, actually. But what's nice about this is that they will gain experience for administering a planet. So let's say I was purely interested in this apparently peaceful fighter pilot. Let's say I didn't want to improve any of the infrastructure at all, and I wanted to put points entirely towards their combat abilities. I can still keep them on the planet. I'll still be getting some kind of bonuses. So in this case, there's still going to be things like improvements to science and dust production on a system. But I can still put those improvements towards pilots, so I don't have to keep throwing this guy into, or this amoeba, into combat to be able to achieve the level up, or the leveling that I want to do. So I thought this was a neat one. Now, am I excited for Fallout 4? So I have not played Fallout games either. That's actually one that I'm going to be playing fairly soon. I'm hoping that the Steam sale will put the Fallout series on sale. I will admit, so as far as Skyrim is concerned, I have some hours in it for sure. I think it's a good game in some senses. I think it's definitely an incredibly impressive technical achievement, but it kind of feels like work to me. So I noticed that for these big open world kind of Bethesda sort of games, I think it's just purely the fact that, I have something like this insurrection going on inside of inside of Skyrim, which I need to deal with, but I've also been the Dragonborn, and I apparently have some big quests that I'm going to be going on there, and there's no sense of urgency behind either of these tasks because I've spent 106 hours in the game. I haven't even completed Act 1. That's one thing that I didn't care for so much, so I'm a little bit worried that the Fallout games are going to be in that mold, which is that I sort of lose the plot because I spend so much time doing all these side quests. But they're really impressive looking games, and again, they're very impressive technical feats. So I am watching Fallout 4 with interest, but I can't necessarily say that I am as excited as other people because it's a genre that I've not quite been able to appreciate as well as others. In Star Wars, do I do the dark side? Do you mean KOTOR? I haven't played KOTOR. I apparently don't play any games. I just mean I know that they put the games on 50% off, but I'm hoping that they will be doing it cheaper. I'm holding out. One other thing I forgot to do as far as the tax system is concerned is... what am I doing? Go home system, you're drunk. I also forgot to check what the impact on science would be. Nothing meaningful. More content, the better. That's yeah. So I mean, I think a perfect example for me is why did I complete? Oh, nice. Okay, Discovery. So yeah, I am definitely not somebody who needs to have more content. One of my favorite games of the previous year was Gods Will Be Watching, which is a very small independent game, but I think an incredibly effectively told story and very interesting scenarios that it put you in. But I'll also say Skyrim's a very different beast. Like, for me, I play a game like Skyrim when it goes on a very large discount, so I pay like $10 for it. So in this case, I don't have an expectation that I'm going to be spending the better part of a summer with this game, let's say. If I paid like 60 or $70 for Skyrim, yeah, I would want to make sure I was getting my money's worth. The one thing that I found difficulty for me is that I tend to be very focused on story. I tend to be very focused on plot elements in that. And so the drawback to an open world game like Skyrim to me is that it doesn't quite constrain me enough to tell the story in as effective of a way as I like. But again, that's not an indictment of the game. That's just more of a reflection in terms of why I don't go into... Like, I wouldn't spend $60 on a game like Fallout because I know my experience with Skyrim suggests that that game has a different set of priorities than what I'm looking for. If that makes sense. Because I know, like, people very rightly love the games that they play, right? This is a fantastic hobby. This is why I like sharing this stuff with you guys. But... with that dedication to games, I know sometimes people can become very protective of games. And so I want to be careful in terms of what I say. When I make a statement about Skyrim's open world, it's not necessarily to say that Skyrim is a poorly made game. It's just a little bit more about how I respond to a game like that. Yeah, have a good night, Kite, and please. I hope everything turns out well for you. I know you'll take care of yourself, but we're definitely thinking of you, and I hope you feel better soon. Freighter 5, how's it going? Yes, Jesse Quill was kind enough to host us. I've been I don't think I've been entertaining anybody since this host. I've been talking a whole lot, but. As an individual, I like a more linear type of gameplay. I won't go so far as to say that, because I've been watching Grand Theft Auto 5 streams and I'm really intrigued by them. I actually think Grand Theft Auto 5, from what I've seen from streamers, actually does a fairly good job of telling a story that really engages me. Like, there's characters I'm interested in, there's situations that I think are interesting. Now, the players don't seem to be obligated to do anything, and yet the story is progressing along, a path that's keeping me quite engaged. Whereas, Skyrim almost sort of feels like how I felt after, like, getting out of high school before I moved to Vancouver. I was kind of like, I'm sitting around the house, it's like, oh, I'm bored, I don't know what to do. And I'm like, I could play a video game. No, I don't want to play a video game. Oh, you can go outside. I'm like, are you kidding? I'm a nerd, I don't go outside. I'm like, oh, you could read a book. I'm like, oh, I don't have any good books. That's a lie, I've got a ton of good books that I haven't read. But, it's sort of like, I need to push myself to go and do something. So I think I tend to be attracted to linear stories because, one, there are more of them, and two, it is a much better established means of telling stories. And so because it's a road that's a little bit better traveled, I think people are a little bit more effective in terms of telling stories that way. Whereas open worlds maybe don't have either the same attention to the story, or people are still trying to find their ways in terms of how to tell those kinds of stories very effectively. So I think the idea of a preference for linear stories more comes from the fact that the examples I have of very well told stories in games come from linear ones, but I don't believe that is an inherent feature of games like that. I just happen to think that there are more ready examples. You're ready for Fallout 4, but you won't get it launched because of the Game of the Year. Yeah, they always do something like that. It's kind of annoying, but I think you've got the right idea there, Enclave Fake Soldier. Look, hardcore Tool fans, if you don't like Tool, they tell you that. Yeah, it's exactly what it's like. I don't need to be entertaining, and yeah, my voice is enough. Yeah, you know what? I'm just going to turn this into a podcast. Exactly. Open world is more about exploring the world than telling just one story. Yeah, no, and that's completely fine, right? Like I said, Skyrim is a very impressive technical achievement. But again, the example that I will give as a counter, now again, it's not one that I played myself, but it seems to me there's a lot of interesting things to do in Grand Theft Auto 5. But I care about their characters, I want to see more about what's going on, and I can still explore the world in Grand Theft Auto 5. So I'm just a little bit curious. I mean, in one sense, you can say, well, maybe Grand Theft Auto 5 is like that because they've been able to see Skyrim, and then they've been able to make their own innovations in terms of that. I don't know, right? It'd be interesting to see whether or not people at Rockstar look at other open world games to craft their own. But yeah, I mean, I'll tell you too, like, not every game necessarily has to have a story. I think if you're doing something high fantasy like Skyrim, I think it's to me, it's a bigger selling feature. And again, like all that I'm trying to do here is maybe just explain why I have not put as much time in these kinds of Bethesda titles as is common amongst gamers. I still enjoy them. Like, if you were to look at my Steam profile right now, you would see the last game that I played was Skyrim, and that I have quite a bit of time put into that game. So, like, there's something that's keeping me coming back. But I also tend to be very analytical about things, so I also try to be honest when I think things are not working as well as they could be. Sir Wedgie, how is it going? Yeah, no, that's absolutely true. And it, like I say, in terms of wanting to be a bit more constrained in terms of Skyrim, it's just because, again, right now, what I don't really know much about my character, right? All that you really know about the protagonist of Skyrim is that they were in the wrong place at the wrong time and narrowly avoided execution because of a dragon attack. So, fair enough. I mean, not every video game protagonist needs to have a backstory. You can supply that for yourself. But again, I've got a civil war raging in Skyrim. I need to decide the Empire or the rebels, the Nords. I don't have a lot of information. You kind of get it as you go along. Which again, if you're a stranger to that land, you know, you're thrown into a civil war. Maybe you don't know that much about the two different groups, but you're still expected to choose sides. That's sort of interesting. You find out that you are the Dragonborn. You know, you have these special powers. You're able to absorb the souls of dragons. Again, another interesting thing. So these are two events that generally have some sort of urgency, right? The Dragonborn story is the primary plot. It's the thing that should be driving your character's actions. And then, of course, the Civil War, or, you know, I'm on the Dark Brotherhood quests right now, where there's a plot to assassinate the Emperor. I've just killed his cousin. Now, in any ordinary series of events, you would sort of expect that there's a bit of a time limit in terms of how you can set up that plot. But I could sort of ignore that story, and then I can just go off and, you know, bake pies for people, and I can go and I can rebuild the Thieves Guild, and maybe I'll go and I'll do the College of Winterhold, and like all of a sudden I've completely lost this thread about being the Dragonborn, and you know, whether or not I try to kill the Emperor doesn't have an impact on the Civil War, and in fact the Civil War is not going to change until I decide that I want to pick up that quest line again. So in this case, I just find Skyrim a little bit harder in terms of well, maybe not even figuring out the priorities, but it seems that these major earth-shaping events do not have the kinds of urgency that they should have in high fantasy. And so I guess in my case, the constraint would be one way of working with that, but that's just because, again, I fall back on the convention of a linear story. Every TS game. Yeah, Skyrim's the first Elder Scrolls game I played. So. Yeah, Jaspu, literally nothing has happened so far. So I'm happy to continue. It's funny actually. There's been a couple of streams where I wind up spending a lot of time talking about Skyrim with people. So I apparently have very controversial opinions about this game. I will do a little bit on this term. I'm happy to keep. I will gladly address some of those the stuff that's happening in chat. But I will get this game going because we're literally on turn 2 and we're like an hour into the stream now. By the way, Sir Wedgie, if you're still here, one person I wanted to shout out. I talked about Team Panda. Okay, I'll read I'm going to read this flavor text, and then I'm going to say something about Wedgie, which I'd meant to say so. As familiarity with space travel and exploration increases, more and more events and anomalies are registered. Some of these are simply strokes of luck, either good or bad, while others are complex situations that require decisions and generate risk. One technology is randomly discovered, which answers why I was so confused to see that I got HE batteries. So, one thing I wanted to say about Sir Wedgie. He is a mod for Seriously Clara, so he's not going to show up on the list of Team Panda people. But he is actually one of the reasons why I am a member of this stream team, because the first time I went into Clara's chat, Sir Wedgie is there to say hello. Come back a second time, Sir Wedgie is there to say hello. And the level to which he makes people feel welcome, the level to which he is able to relate to people is extremely valuable. He brings something that very few other mods do bring to channels. Of course, Jazzpoo does the same in Dahlia. No. But honestly, Sir Wedgie is somebody who does get his praise from Clara, but he is one of the people who it's very hard to overly praise, because I can definitely tell you in terms of my personal interaction with Clara's stream, which has resulted in quite a bit of Twitch activity, down to me having this channel and joining Team Panda and going to things like the Vancouver Twitch meetup. Basically, the level of integration that I've had with this wonderful community is due in large part to the fact that he is exceptionally good at his mod job and just simply interacting with people, empathizing with them. And on top of all of that, he is a streamer himself. So for those of you who are not already following him, I just happened to see that little face in chat there, so you can click on that name. And he is somebody who you won't necessarily see on the Team Panda list, but I definitely think is somebody who is very worthy of your attention. Yeah, mission failed, Jaspoo. You made me feel super welcome. Alright, so we're just kind of going on through the galaxy now. I've got all of these luxury resources here. I've been a bit unlucky in the fact that I haven't found any planets that I can colonize that have these resources. So it might be an idea to take a look at this system and see if there's something that I could colonize because it's got access to these luxury resources. Small Tundra is the most likely for me to be able to research next. So one thing I would look at here is the exploration option, and within 5 turns I'd be able to colonize that planet. Again, I'm still going to do my exploration because it could be that I have a sufficiently attractive colonization option somewhere else in this this branch of the galaxy. But these are the sort of things that I think about when I'm playing a 4X game like this, which is I've got a certain number of turns, I've got a certain number of science points with which I can with which I can achieve my goals, or alternatively, I need to pick my goals given my resource constraints. What's the best way of doing that? And if it turns out I don't have any planets that I can inhabit, it's actually best that I take those 5 turns to make myself able to colonize Tundra, because that's going to mean I can build up that planet faster, I can build my infrastructure, I can get that capital accumulation happening, and I'll be able to make up for the lost time by leveraging those resources. Have a good night, Vinny. Thanks a lot for stopping by. And actually to all of you from Jesse's stream. So obviously we had a fairly substantial drop-off, which is fine, because definitely, I mean, Jesse is a hard act to follow. I sometimes pity the people who host her simply because she's such a good stream, and I think everything kind of looks crappy compared to hers. But I actually really appreciate so many of you guys staying in here. This is definitely quite a few more people than I'm used to on the stream. I know I spent a lot of time talking, but it's really nice to have you guys in here, and I definitely appreciate the support that you've given. I also appreciate you guys coming with such interesting material in chat. So I'll be a little bit better in terms of actually playing a game for you in terms of and talking as well. But I think Jesse's lucky to have you as viewers, but of course, as a viewer of Jessie Quill, I also consider myself very lucky that she streams so regularly and so well on a regular basis. I'm actually a little terrified of what's gonna be what I'm gonna be faced with when I come into into Dahlia's stream next. Although of course Jaspoo also streams, so whenever I visit her stream, I might be slightly terrified of what's coming in there as well. All right, discovery of a wonder, solar farm. What first appeared to be a planet is in a very tight orbit around the sun turns out to be the remains of an endless power generation plant, full of advanced particle engineering and protected by an Orichalcrix shell. This installation once produced vast quantities of microwave energy that was beamed to a grid now destroyed. A grid of now destroyed transmission satellites. So these are just simply extra resources that you'll get for colonizing those planets. Again, not necessarily that important for me right now because I don't have the ability to colonize that many planets. You don't lie to the people, Jock. You may man up and start your first stream tomorrow, maybe, you don't know. I thought you've already streamed before, though. I'm almost certain that you spoke of streaming in the past tense. Oh, and Cyan Prince, I did read your message on Skyrim. I don't have a lot to add to it. I think your estimation of it is correct. That I'm definitely very conscious of the intention behind a game like Skyrim in terms of completing it on your own terms. So maybe it just comes down to the fact that I need to be told in terms of what happens with games. But again, I don't. The biggest thing that I want to say, especially with a game like Skyrim, which I have a great respect in terms of the technical achievement, is that I would never dream of calling it a bad game. It's definitely not. My experience of it is that I can think of ways that I would have enjoyed it a little bit more. But I would say the same about just about any game that I play. The fact that I would... I'm trying to think of the best example that I could take. of like a game that I really love. Well, okay, Civilization actually. For a very long time, I am kind of raising. Yeah, I might as well raise the taxes. I don't have a big penalty for doing that. A good example of this would actually be Civilization, which is probably my favorite game series ever. Like, every time there's been a Civilization game come out, that's always meant an all-nighter for me. I've always spent, you know, the whole night playing that game. Even Beyond Earth. Still play the living daylights out of a Civilization game when it comes out. But with that in mind, like, with maybe the exception of the most recent expansion to Civilization 5, I would say that the end game of Civilization has always been the inferior component of that. Now, does it mean I don't like Civilization games? Quite the contrary. I think they're fantastic games. I'm always going to enjoy playing them. But even though I enjoy them, it doesn't mean that I don't reflect on things that I would find better. Although I think somebody who's very, like, combat or very, you know, if somebody enjoys turn-based strategy as far as military engagements are concerned, I actually think they would enjoy the later part of Civilization more, and they'd find the earlier parts a little bit more difficult. A perfect place to store my leftovers. Nice one, YG. Despu was technically streamed before, 3 times for about a year or so ago. Twice you were merely doing it for proof. On Speedruns Live for a casual blind speedrun of Mario 64. Cool. And you're doing a private stream for some... Whoa! Is that kind of thing allowed on Twitch? And a few days ago you did a short test on your alt account, but you had nothing but gameplay going, so perhaps you're thinking of that. Yeah, I mean, I did not... I have definitely not seen you stream, but I seem to recall... I think it was in Dahlia's... channel. You had... I believe you had referred to streaming as in you had done some streaming. So... I kind of drew from that. But now I'm waiting to see when you stream. Alright, so I finally found a planet that I can colonize. In this case, I'll just take advantage of that so I can... Basically, just so I can build up my my bases a bit more. I am going to invest in some other technologies before I try to colonize Tundra. But I don't want to fall too far behind in terms of expansion. So, Jungle Planet, not the best planet I could wind up with, if I'm completely honest, but certainly a very reasonable location for me to land in. Just going to assume I'm insane since you don't ever recall mentioning streaming in his chat. Okay, maybe you mentioned it here then. I definitely know at some point you've talked about streaming. Unless I'm making it up. Great things have small beginnings. Haggard, unsure, but full of hope, the first colonists of your faction have set foot on another planet. It may seem trivial, but even the most epic adventure begins with a simple step. Alright, so decision time. Now, one thing you can do with a game like this is, of course, do your technology with kind of a mind to, well, where do I want to go in the very end, you know, and exactly 4,688 turns, I'm going to get extreme consumption. I don't really think that's an effective way of handling things. So I could say that soil xenobiology is the way to go because that gives me some buildings that I can... That gives me some buildings that will increase my population very quickly. The alternative would be, you know, military improvements. I'm not really going to be going into combat. Now, the drawback here is I always tend to have a weaker military than I should later into the game. I usually get caught by pirates or something like that. But right now I'm actually going to begin with isolation shields just so I can get that early advantage on technology. And then... I think what I'll do is I'll do isolation shields. I'll do xenobotany and then soils xenobiology because after basically in the 3 turns it takes me to be able to go to a tundra planet, I'm already going to have something like a colony ship. Like, I will have this research before I'm able to colonize the Tundra planets. So I think that's the best way for me to queue this up. I definitely like these industry-oriented ones because, again, this is just a matter of churning out as many improvements as you can as quickly as possible. I can go without these dust-generating ones for now, but it is an improvement that I want to consider relatively quickly. Now on Pisces, we will do the same thing we did last time, which is start with Evolved Soils. We'll go for our next bit of infrastructure, which is the heavy isotope refineries and then xenotourism. Again, for me, dust, in most 4X games that I play, whether it's gold or it's dust or anything like that, I don't like hoarding it. If I don't have a direct way of translating that dust into some kind of production, like rushing a factory or something like that, I'm really not that interested in hanging on to it. So this is where I'm going to do things like go to a menu like this and just strip down the tax rate, to 0 or something like that, if it means that I can research things more quickly. Turns out I can't. Or maybe they've just changed the game a bit, but it's actually very suspicious that those are taking the same time. So I don't have a very good reason for setting it at 30, just because the big thing I'm noticing right now is... Oh, hang on. These are changing. So the sweet spot is 30%. This, again, as far as the numbers on these bars are concerned, not all that important. I do like the way that they set this up in the game, where you can actually see the direct effects on your planet. You'll sometimes notice weird things like my tax rate's now 25%, but I'm actually generating less industry than if I set it at 30. So you kind of want to pay attention for stuff like that. But this sort of seems to be an optimal point in terms of maximizing my production. So in this case, the gains that I'm making are not translating into a full turn, like building something a full turn faster, but it's at least enough for me to kind of build up those points. Can I tell when the amount will get higher and what I'm producing? Oh, you mean like when... Are you talking about when I'm adjusting that bar, Red Pain? This is just explaining what luxury resources I've discovered inside the galaxy. That's just because of that technology that I got. I'm not actually accessing any of it, so I'm not that worried. Actually, what I should have done was taken a look to see if I can hire another hero. Ewok Fuzzy Nuts, how's it going? Guys, Ewok Fuzzy Nuts is another member of Team Panda. He is currently doing The Witcher 3, if I'm not mistaken. Really great caster. He is somebody who, first of all, is really friendly every time I stop by, which is, it counts. But he has always had... The really neat thing about Ewok Fuzzy Nuts is the first time I stopped by, it was Minecraft, which I haven't played. Had a really nice way of explaining it to me in terms... Like, everybody really likes Minecraft, right? But he actually explained it to me in terms that I could relate to a little bit more. And again, maybe one day I will finally play Minecraft, but I always stick to my trieds and trues. There's just so many games that I want to play that I haven't done yet. But he also, like, during each of his playthroughs, there's always at least one thing that he says that, you know, I'm chuckling about, like, the next day or something like that. Or he's got, you know, an explanation or something like that. There's always something special that I walk away from when I watch one of his streams. So I'm sadly not as active in his chat as I should be. But he is definitely a streamer I like to put on. Even if I'm, like, doing something else in the house, I always want to make sure that I have him on in the background, because he's definitely a good caster. When you need like 5 or 50,000 to build and see my approval system goes down, it makes less per turn, and then it starts... Yeah, so that definitely relates to what we were talking about a little bit earlier. So one thing that happens is, like, you're absolutely right. Like, if I just put this down to 0, in terms of the accumulation that's happening, I am going to produce that thing slower overall. Like, if I put myself back up to I could actually get away with a little bit more now, it looks like. So, no, it's 30%, like just like last time. So if I were to change this down to 23, I'm never going to see that change on the production scale, unless, again, it's right on the margin. So what does happen is over a period of time, you are actually going to notice that like, if you were to take the game as a whole, you could add up those small individual bits of industry that you build, and you would actually say that there's a loss that's occurred to having your approval in the wrong place on the slider. The big thing to me is that the early turns, you don't have a lot of technology to work with. You're not generating that much industry anyway. And so in this case, the losses from getting that calculation wrong at the beginning of the game are so minor compared to, being able to set yourself up as quickly as possible. But you're absolutely right. Like, checking this is not the most accurate presentation in terms of how long things are going to take. It is ultimately an addition of this industry that you're generating. So if I go from 24 to 23, it is officially taking me slower to build it, just not at a point that the game says that it's taking 3 turns instead of 2, because one industry very rarely is going to push you over the edge on that. Your great background? That's not true at all. I said, even if I'm doing things around, I need to make sure that it's going on. I'm a busy man, Ewok. I don't always get to watch a stream as often as I'd like. All right, so like most 4X strategy games, you're going to have a little bit of a lull. Like right now, I'm probably going to notice that this doesn't... this is going to be the last thing that I explore. There are sort of wormholes here. Now, I can't actually travel across these until I build a specific piece of technology. I'm also not really that interested in traveling along those lines until I build up my my fleets. So, in this case, I'm not going to put a lot of priority into discovering that technology right away. But again, I do need to keep in mind that if I'm too slow in developing it, somebody else is, and they're just going to get all the good real estate. So, as with all these things, it's a balance. All right. So I could spend 80 to hire one of these heroes. I guess I do need a fleet leader, so... H adrift. Oh, Harry's adrift. Strategist and warrior for a successful and growing hive. It was a bishop-level leader of war groups, deciding logically that the most efficient way to be able to do more for the hive would be to consume dust. It did so and was forever changed. Smarter, faster, more aggressive and tougher, it rapidly outpaced the hive development and became a mercenary, seeking ever greater challenges. This is a Craver. I will actually hire this guy. But in this case, I'm actually going to assign him to the other system. Now, I'm not really doing this so that this hiver can increase the productive capacity of my new colony so much as I'm putting him there so that he can build up his skills. When this character levels up, I'm actually going to put him onto a fleet, and then I'm going to level all the combat abilities. Homeworld? I think Shan's played Homeworld. That's an old Relic game, isn't it? I think it got like a remastered version recently or something. Do you want to give me more of a pitch on that? Or should I just go and do my own research? All right. What I have right now is a decision if I want to increase labor or wit. So wit is going to increase science and dust, and labor is going to increase my productive capacity. I'm going to go for labor right now because, again, right at this point, I want to be increasing my food. I want to be able to build the largest fleets. And I may change later, but right now I'm going to go all in on building up labor just because I know that's not going to happen with the Craver hero. And there may be a 3. Okay. So does anybody want to give me a pitch in terms of what it's about and why I might like it? Alright, so we got another place that we can colonize. In this case, it's a medium ocean, so it's actually not a bad place to go. And my home system is, first of all, fully populated, and in addition to that, they've got more to build. So, actually, let's skip all of that. So I'm going to wind up wasting... I think I will actually build industrial zones first. And then I'm going to build a colony ship. I feel like I should build more than one, actually. I'll build 2 colony ships. That's actually going to knock down my population here. But after that, I'll just go back to evolved soils, rebuild the population, and then go for public-private partnerships. Unless I can buy them on it. No, I can't. Exploration Event Libra, discovery of a wonder, Dust Nebula. A warning beacon in the middle of the entire nebula rich with dust tells its story. Due to poorly controlled research, a strain of dust ran wild and self-replicated out of control. By the time it was reined in, the entire planetary systems had been converted to dust, with no food remained for the handful of surviving researchers that left this grim note. Do I like tiny spacecrafts doing battle on an epic-sized scale? I think that RTS in each LV level impacts the next level you play in story mode. Okay, I'm interested. So I seem to have gotten a ship from some... Ah, here we go. So this is, we've already read this flavor text before, but we've got a new exploration ship, so my fleet has grown. What I think I'm going to do with the smaller ship is actually take it to the other side of the galaxy. I've really not that much else that I can explore, but I am going to move them over to Ingress. That's basically so I can have a presence near this uncharted yellow sun, and basically if something comes through the wormhole, they're going to be able to see it a little bit sooner. Again, what I'm doing with Quadris is I'm taking a turn so I can improve my industrial capacity. I'm not going to be able to generate food while I'm doing colony ships, so I kind of want to make sure I'm maximizing my output that way. And then once I build my colony ships, I'll move back to food and sort of rebuild the population from there. And we've got the public-private partnerships for science, so in 2 turns we'll have learned xenobiotany. Right. And as always, I'm just going to play around a little bit. It looks like 30% is kind of my sweet spot for the next little while. I probably don't need to spend so much time in this menu. But I'm also a little neurotic about this stuff, so if I keep going back, my apologies. It's just my OCD ways. Alright, looks like I got another colony ship that I'm building. You know what? I'm okay being knocked down, but to the original size. I definitely need to rebuild after that, though. I'm also going to take a really big hit to my approval for such rapid expansion, but I think I should be able to handle that. I gained 5 science for finding Baton. And Quadris is now moving on to its colony ship. Serious business done? What serious business is that, Jazboo? So I almost have a suspicion that Pisces is actually going to overtake the capital in terms of its infrastructure. I'm not too bothered by that, just because in the end I can switch it back to production and build the colony ships on there. Just because it's in a capital doesn't mean you can't make colony ships. So one thing that's neat about this game is each planet's going to have the potential to have some unique occurrences on them. Some of them can be negatives that with technology you can actually turn into positives. This was just an unambiguously positive event. So the universe is an impossibly vast and strange place, and the planets one finds there are equally amazing. Many of them have anomalies, unusual geologic, atmospheric, or biological characteristics, or even, on occasion, the remains of an ancient civilization. Proceed at your own risk. And ancient oh yeah, here we go. So, ancient artifacts. I gain +3 dust per person on the planet, so again, a reason for me to increase my population as quickly as possible. +2 science per person on a planet. And away teams wearing red shirts to be easily found in the event of death discovered numerous OOPARTS, out-of-place artifacts. Ooparts? Their origin and the identity of their makers are not known, but they will certainly be of value to researchers and of interest to tourists. Oh, stream thingies. That's really interesting. So, I was meaning to talk about this because I had that experience with Telltale Games. I'm really happy that Steam decided to do refunds now. I think that is long overdue. But Humble Bundle actually was really good about refunds. They made an exception to their normal refund policy because of the circumstances. So, big kudos to the Humble Store for being sensible about that issue, although not buying another Telltale game again. That is, by the way, a personal determination. I think all of you can enjoy Telltale games as much as you want, but I'm going to make a VOD about the situation just so I can explain my position on that. But so what did you wind up returning, Ewok Fuzzy Nuts? Inquiring minds want to know, so I don't wind up buying them. I am researching a lot faster than I was expecting. So I think the way to go here is I'm going to do core mining just because it gives me access to resources right away. I don't need to colonize any more planets, so I will do... I've kind of been ignoring my military for a while, so I'll do these first 2 military branches. This is a planetary exploitation, so this isn't actually going to do anything for me right away. I think I'll finish with relativistic economics, and then we'll see where the rest of this takes me. I do at some point need to research the applied Casimir effect, but I don't feel like I definitely want to improve my military before I even consider doing that. I could also do wealth systems, but ideally I'm going to have enough to build on my planets that I wouldn't actually need to use this. I really like Telltale Games. The games are quite good. The company is not good. Evolve, Life is Strange, and Saints. You wanted to return Saints Row 4? That's a shame. I think it's a silly game, but I was sufficiently amused by it. So shame it wasn't for you though. Sick of Telltale. Saints Row 4 is definitely reflects that it was originally DLC for Saints Row 3. I agree with that completely. Oh, so Ewok, this interests me actually. When you're talking about game-breaking bugs, is this Telltale games that you're talking about? Because that's actually specifically what happened with me and why I'm not going to be buying from them again. All right, so we have built our colony ship. There's a little bit of... There's some consideration that you want to make in terms of where you colonize first. So what would make sense for me would be, at least to my mind, is Kura for two reasons. One, there's the luxury goods. But two, with enough time, this is going to create a border that enemies would need to declare war to cross, which gives me a bit more access to all of these other areas over here. Now, is anybody actually going to be coming around this part of the neighborhood? Probably not. But in general, I kind of like to think along those lines. The other way, you can also think of it negatively, right? There's no special resources to exploit on these planets, so this is also the better place to go to for that reason. But just gives a little bit of an indication in terms of how I think about games like this. Now, I am losing approval, though, so let's see if we can improve things a bit. No, it looks like 30% is still... Oh, wait. Looks like we can break through. It's only really 1 point difference, though. I think I'll go for it. Red Pain, that's Homeworld you're talking about, right? Yeah, so Ewok, what happened with me is I bought Poker Night at the inventory, and I bought it through the Humble Store. On the Humble Store, they were very clear that the requirements for the game were you need to have, Mac OS better than 10.5 or something like that. Because I'm a Mac gamer, I always read the system requirements because I know they're very temperamental. I know that I can't always play everything. So, and I'm playing on a laptop, for crying out loud, right? It's a nice laptop, but at some point, there's going to be a limit that I hit. So, as it turns out, if you go to the Steam page, it actually says, this game is not compatible with... Actually, I'm going to change this. Not compatible past OS 10.7 or something like that. But they do not list that on the Humble site. So basically, they've been selling this game that doesn't actually work on Macs since an OS that's 3 or 4 years old or something like that. This has been a bug that's been there for years, and they've been very clear in saying that they have no intention of fixing it. So, I say to them, I obviously email the Telltale store, the Humble store to say what's happened. But what's astonishing me about Telltale is that they've known about it, they say they're not fixing it, and when people are asking about this on the forums, they're basically saying outright, it's your responsibility to look for information like this, we're not helping you. So I mean, first of all, it's a really crappy way that they're handling the issue, but I present to them, I say, the story that you're telling and the reason you're telling everybody that you're not doing refunds is that the information is clearly listed on the Steam page. That is demonstrably not true on the Humble store. So, for all the however many thousand people are buying the game there, what are you doing about that? And again, similar idea. We apologize for the inconvenience, but it's not our responsibility. I'm you are kind of the people who made this game. So again, big kudos to Humble Store, even though I'd opened the game and tried to play it because, you know, foolish me thought that this game that is advertised is going to work on my system. Doesn't, you know. Humble Store knew what was up, and obviously after I kicked up a fuss on their forums, the Telltale people had the requirements changed. But Humble Store gave me the money back, took the key away. But in my complaint to Telltale Games, I actually said, it's like, if you go on GOG.com, if you go to Green Man Gaming, there's plenty of places where you're selling this game, and none of those sites have the fact that this game doesn't work for the most recent version of Mac OS. Like, in my opinion, you should not be selling this as a Mac game if it's not working on the latest version. Because, at this point, they're on the support forums, they're saying, maybe you should downgrade your OS. Because that's a reasonable approach, right? So in that case, like, the reason why I'm not buying from Telltale Games is not that I think they make bad games. I actually think the games are really good, and I have enjoyed all of the ones that I've played. But with that in mind, I also have to live with the fact that at any point there can be, like, today, Apple just announced another operating system, right? Which means that it's entirely possible a couple months from now, every Telltale game that I have and that I enjoy will stop working. Do I think that's going to be happening for Windows users? Not really. I think they make enough from Windows users that they kind of have to, to update things like that. But in my view, I'm really not comfortable buying a product where it has this tremendous uncertainty in terms of when it's not going to be able to be played. Like, if you can contrast this to Amplitude, which made one paid DLC for this game, and every other update, including things like Civilization Builders or Endless Legend, which is, again, getting one piece of DLC and has had several updates that have added new content for free, or Civilization Beyond Earth, which gave away a free soundtrack. You've got lots of different games that are doing these very substantial updates and giving additional content for free. It seems to me that I probably could spend my money in better places than groups that aren't going to continue to support their games, even in, like, the basic functionality on an updated OS. So for me, it's just a pure calculation in terms of how to spend my gaming dollar. I don't necessarily want to support a company that adopts those kinds of policies. And a game like Gods Will Be Watching, which I thought had a fascinating story, was a lot of fun for me to play. Why wouldn't I support a developer that does that and has kept this compatibility for the longest time? So again, it's, as with all of these things, it's a personal determination for myself. Do I tell other people not to buy Telltale games? No, I'll tell them about my experience and why I think they have a very poor customer service policy. But, if people like playing Telltale games, why would I tell people they're not enjoying it? So. Okay, that's kind of interesting to know about then, Ewok. So, and apparently it doesn't extend just to Mac users then. That's a really unfortunate practice on their part. I don't feel that. I am actually going to make a VOD on this to specifically explain why I feel the way that I do. Because I don't... I really want to play Tales from the Borderlands, right? I think this looks like a really interesting game. I would like to play the next The Wolf Among Us game when they make it. But... I'm not gonna throw good money after a title like that based on the way that they've acted. Careful mentioning Civ games? Why? Oh, I didn't know that they're doing that, actually. So what do you mean by stopping support on Civilization 5? Is there some incompatibility that isn't there? Because I know, like, after what was the third expansion called? Brave New World. They said that was going to be the last DLC, and that was before they announced Beyond Earth. I think I made too many colony ships. But I also don't see any reason to... I don't think it's a good idea to change. I'll just, what I'll do is I'll use the ships that I have, and then I'll just park these guys outside of systems that I want to take over. It's been like that since Civ 3 to get you to buy the next one. The multiplayer has major issues that they're not going to fix. Ah, so that's a shame. So, like, I don't have a problem with them not releasing further content for a game that is gone. So, like, I know for a really long time everybody said that Civilization 4 was better than Civilization 5. I will admit that I think Beyond Earth got a bit of a bad rap. I think that the game is better than what I'm seeing some people say about it. But keep in mind, too, like, Alpha Centauri is one of my favorite games of all time. So, you know, take that. I've kind of already established my weird credentials with the fact that I'm not as big of a fan of Skyrim as other people. So, like, I need to accept for a certain point that my tastes are very idiosyncratic. But I will also say, like, I definitely see what people are talking about when they make the comparison between Civilization 5 and Beyond Earth. Like, I think it's perfectly legitimate to say that I really like 5 and I didn't like Beyond Earth that much. So I'd kind of prefer it if Firaxis would support both, because in the end I think there is space for both a historically oriented game and a sci-fi one. But the fact that there are technical issues still inside the game that aren't getting supported anymore is a bit of a shame, in my view. Whether or not it's a plot to try and get people to buy the next game, like, in the end, honestly, I can't think of a lot of consumers who are going to say, well, the multiplayer in this previous version isn't really working anymore, so now I'm going to buy the game I don't enjoy. Like, I don't really think that's a very credible line of thinking. Maybe I'm wrong with that assumption. But I will say I do definitely have a bit more goodwill for Firaxis, partially because the Beyond Earth soundtrack, whatever you think of the game, I think the Beyond Earth soundtrack is one of the finest pieces of composition for a game. So the fact that they gave that away for free, I think, was really nice. But yeah, I'm not happy to hear that Civilization 5 is not getting the support that it needs. Did they really raise the price of Civilization 5? That's ridiculous. Alright, we only do offense. I will say for the pricing stuff, I tend to be a little bit too econ studenty about that. Like, in the end, it's their property. They can charge what they want for the game. But I also think it's kind of stupid if they want to charge for a game that they haven't put a lot of money into. So, like, a perfect example, right? Like, I really like Alpha Centauri, and I actually noticed that on, or I guess it's Centauri, however you pronounce it. If it's on, like, GOG.com right now, I think it's like $5 or something like that. Now, if Firaxis were to turn around and say it's like, oh, you know what, it's System Shock, we know this is his favorite game. For you, my friend, $10. Like, okay, I just won't buy it. You know, I like that game, but I don't like it, you know, $10, especially when I have Beyond Earth, right? So at some point, it's like, you know, would I like to have these things? Well, yeah. I mean, I'd like to have a chauffeur as well. It's not affordable to me, and I just accept that that's not the case. The difference between the value and the benefit that I get from it isn't there. So when businesses decide to price a certain way, I don't quite get as mad about it as maybe I should. But oh my god, did I really? Okay. I actually thought I already had those ships on their way, so I've apparently wasted a whole bunch of time. But yeah, I mean, I also think, like, just as a regular, the biggest thing is that consumers, especially gamers, who tend to, like, if you think about it, very few people have personal interactions with the Ford Motor Company. I mean, there's still massive brand loyalty for car models, right? But or car manufacturers, sorry. But definitely games, like, through Twitch, through different social media contacts, just kind of the nature of this particular industry is such that we definitely tend to be very vocal in our preferences. And so in some ways, I think there's sometimes an expectation that, whether or not something is permissible from a deal or either a studio or a distributor doesn't necessarily mean that still meets the expectations of the gaming community. I think that they are rightly held to a higher standard. But with that in mind, again, because I tend to think about these things in very abstract terms, I sometimes seem a little cold when it comes to things like pricing issues. Yeah, I will say I'm really disappointed. Well, actually, this is something I've talked about on other occasions too, but the simple fact that, like, your point on games not shipping complete is very well taken. Another one that drives me crazy is I think that studios are putting less and less time into creating manuals and proper tutorials because they're relying on kind of the gaming community to supply that material. And I mean, I've written my guide for Dungeon of the Endless, but there's a certain point where I'm like, well, listen, I'm providing a service for you, right? This game is now more playable having written a guide. Where's my piece of the pie? So I'm going to build a ship, but I need to go into the ship designer. I'm also, I need a glass of water and just need to get my stretch. I'm actually probably not, I'm not necessarily going to be streaming that much longer anyway, but I was trying to just power through my normal break time, but I actually need to just get up and stretch. So I am going to take a brief break. I encourage you guys to do the same, to take care of yourself. I know sometimes Twitch involves a lot of sitting, so just take a moment to get up and stretch. And alternatively, you can enjoy Fly By No's wonderful soundtrack for this game, or you can possibly do both. But I will, I'll jump onto the, I'll jump back on. We can continue our chat about gaming pricing policies and DLC and other such fun while I completely fail to encounter anything interesting in this game. This has just been me colonizing planets for the past 2 hours. But we'll come back. I will do as much of the stream as I can handle. And we'll continue on with our Endless Space. See you guys in a couple seconds. Alright, thank you everybody for bearing with me while I got my beverage. Let me just catch up with chat and then we'll continue on. Actually, I'm going to do the one thing that I'm worst at in this game, which is designing ships. But we will get through this together. So yeah, on Red Pain's point, games shipping completed. I mean, it's a wonderful boon that we have high-speed internet connections and that you are able to, that you're able to fix a game. I mean, consider a situation where you can't do that. If there is some kind of a bug in the game, sometimes these mistakes happen, right? Just because you have the incentive to be a little bit more careful in your QA doesn't mean that QA isn't going to fail at some point. So certainly it's made the corrections for those errors easier. But unfortunately, it's just so easy to release. When you have this pressure to meet a deadline, the incentive to let stuff slide just is too great. And that's a shame, right? Because I think there's plenty of games that got better later that probably did a lot worse than they should have just because people let the deadline drive them a bit too much. Now, on Icewind Dale and Baldur's Gate and things like that, yeah, I mean, this is one thing. If you think about it, it's actually really weird to buy... it's weird to buy software on physical media. Now, you can make an argument, once upon a time that programs that you would get were so large that it wasn't feasible to have them digitally distributed. But that doesn't explain some of the other things. Like, I can remember a time when, I'd be with my parents inside, a store that had, in Canada, there's a place called London Drugs, which it's kind of like a supermarket, but it doesn't have a lot of food stuff. It's more like house supplies, and they always have an electronics section. So, my parents are just going and getting a mop, whatever the cleaning fluid you call it is. I'm all gonna run off to the computer section because I'm interested in this stuff. And what does all the software look like? The Windows, if they're still carrying it, or the video games. They're in these big boxes that are the size of some of my textbooks. Now, there's no reason to have that, right? There's no reason to have a box so large other than the fact that what you're buying when you get a piece of software is a license. You're buying something purely intangible, right? It's computer code. The physical elements of this are largely... an illusion to actually make you feel like you're getting value for your money. And, I mean, hell, an operating system's a really useful thing, right? I'm able to do a lot of econometrics because I have an operating system on my computer. Now, fortunately, competition has also lowered the cost of that operating system to a point that they're giving away the upgrades, which is great for me. But, I really think that the design of a lot of early software was based around the fact that people are used to walking into stores and buying physical things, and that's why you had these very large game boxes. And then I can remember, when I'm actually buying games on my own, and this is probably more around the time I moved to Vancouver, I finally realized at some point video game boxes got smaller, and they were roughly about the size of a CD. And of course now, we don't have any problem jumping on Steam, because, we find it more, convenient to get these digital games. But I think when you're thinking about kind of earlier days in terms of home computing, I definitely believe that they were selling software in that specific way because people wanted a physical product. And I think in the case of games like Baldur's Gate and Icewind Dale and all these other games that would give you things like cloth maps, is they're kind of recognizing that maybe gamers aren't quite as hung up as, let's say, a businessman who's buying Microsoft Word or something like that. And so what the developers are doing is they're just throwing in something a little bit extra. It's and maybe it's a way of combating piracy too, right? It's you can pirate Baldur's Gate, but you're not actually going to get all the cool stuff that comes with this game. I don't know, right? I'm not quite in a point where I can say what my I wasn't the one walking into the store saying I'm going to put down my hard-earned money to to get Baldur's Gate or something like that. So, but that's kind of what I'm thinking about. No, I mean, in the end, developers, I mean, again, digital distribution is just more convenient for everybody. You can still buy these deluxe editions, obviously, right, which give you these physical products, but I tend to notice now that developers seem to be giving back in the form of giving sort of these free updates and things like that. But it does also come with the cost that, as we were talking about, the quality of release software isn't always as good as it should be. Insert disc 2 of 12 to continue. Yeah. You had to send in Mortal Kombat 3 to get the board upgraded so you could get more fight. That's insane. I can't believe that actually happened. See, this is one thing that interested me about, I believe it was the SNES, but when, like, the FX chip, and I think it was Star Fox is the first game that had this. What really fascinated me about the fact that Nintendo kept with cartridges for so long was the fact that you could actually allow for hardware upgrades built into the game. So like the FX chip was really good at doing matrix algebra. So all of a sudden you're now capable of rendering 3D. A very primitive 3D by our standards, but still something that, because you're not putting in a disc, you're putting in a card, and that card can have a better processor attached to it, I thought was fascinating. And then the GameCube comes out, and of course that's running on discs. But still, I think it's kind of cool. Oh, that's really funny. I have played Day of the Tentacle, but the version I had was on a CD, because it's in part of a big LucasArts collection. I'm really surprised that game is not available on the Steam. Like, they've done... oh, man, the Steam sale? I gotta get Grim Fandango. But, like, a lot of the other good LucasArts stuff has gotten a remake. So, like, Monkey Island and games like that. But you can't seem to find you can't find Day of the Tentacle anywhere. Or I can't, at least. Alright, so, let's talk about ships. Okay, what I'm actually going to do here is I'm going to go for the game's default setting. So that's just the Defender. And let's see if I can do any better. Well, actually, what did they give me on this thing? Screw it, I'm just going to go with the default. And just build a bunch of these. I can't remember how many I can have in a fleet. 5. Mostly right now I've just got scouts defending this area, so as soon as an enemy fleet comes in, these guys are going to get wiped out. So if I can build probably 2 fleets of 5, I should be good. Well, I mean, in one sense, I agree with you, Red Pain, that if prices are supposed to reflect the cost of producing a game, then you're correct that that you should see a fall in the price of a game because a physical product isn't being created anymore. But with that in mind, you could also make the argument that perhaps they've taken those resources and we are getting better games because they're able to do it. So, for instance, the fact that Amplitude Studios has continuously updated Endless Space without charging me extra for that, that could just simply be a reflection of the fact that the resources that they would have put in towards creating these physical products is no longer there. Again, the important thing about the dollar value is that you can look at it and you can say it's wrong for these businesses to make too much of a profit, right? It's a debate that we're having across a few different measures of society. We've got things like Occupy Wall Street, which are talking about the level of income inequality between, the richest 1% or the 0.01%, and however they want to measure that, and the majority of people. And, it's not one that has an easy answer, right? Anytime that you try and say that there's too much, I don't think it's the best argument, but immediately somebody's going to say, it's like, okay, at what ratio does it become immoral? So, you know, at any point, you know, you can say it's like, okay, well, a developer should be able to cover its costs, right? You know, the people who program the game should get a good salary. The artists who make these really interesting looking environments, they should get paid. And obviously, you know, the entrepreneur, the person who founded the company, you know, they should be compensated for, you know, taking the time to get the studio together. But, you know, once they start making, you know, let's say there's a game that made $1 billion, right? It's like Titanic, and it's a runaway success. You know, over this period of time, game just straight up made $1 billion, and they're still charging $60 because it's just that good of a game. I don't always find it easy to say, well, they should lower the price of the game. As a business decision, they should lower the price of the game, because probably at the point that this game has grossed $1 billion, everybody who finds that game worth the $60 has bought it for $60, and that the people who only get $30 worth of value are the people who are left, and so it would make sense because then they're able to capture more revenues. It doesn't cost anything to make another copy of the game. But so far as to say that, you know, this firm, you know, let's say this firm... here's a great example of how this would apply to the digital distribution situation. I don't know what the rake-off is for Steam. Let's say 20% just for the sake of the argument. Now, you could say that if Steam charges 5% less, let's say their you know, the rake-off that they get from their sale, or the sale of a game, goes from 20% to 15%. The argument that says that they should, you know, the price should be a reflection of the costs would say that we should see a 5% decrease in the cost of games across the board. But I'm not entirely sure that's quite the right way to think about these products, because in the end, like when I play Endless Space, it's like, this game's worth $10 to me or it isn't. As a consumer, I obviously want to maximize that surplus. So if I can get Endless Space for $1 and I value it at $10, I'm going to be super happy. But in the end, I'm still getting value from this game up to the $10 mark. So, I think there's a little bit more that goes into that determination than just the cost of making the game. Oh, it's 30%? Cool. I didn't know that was a published number. This has definitely been a talk-heavy stream tonight, so I'm sorry, guys. Endless Space is a pretty fun game, but I've been doing a really terrible job of selling it like this. I will get back to it in a future cast, if nothing exciting. Well, I mean, I'll do it in general, but if nothing too exciting happens on this cast, I'll be sure to play it a little bit sooner than later, just so we can actually see what combat looks like in this game. I don't think that will allow me to improve the ships, but let's just double check. Nope, yeah, looks like I do get a new... So I guess I have to retrofit this ship that I just built. Or maybe not? I guess I need to make it as a fleet. Alright, I'll just save the money for now. I'm sure there will be other upgrades that I can apply. So again, similar idea for this particular system, which is going to be start with the alien grafting just so I can bump up the population. There's actually a lot of population that I can build on this planet. It's a large one. So I'll start with the additional industry just so I can build up these other items as well. And I'm not that interested in building dust, so I'm going to start with public-private partnerships, then move to xenotourism industries. Next thing that I'm going to do is Pisces is just creating ships at this point. So I'm going to move the hero off of this planet where they're not necessarily doing that much, and instead I'm going to assign them to this new system. I've distracted you from Game of Thrones. Good show, chat. Awesome. The Bunny Crusade, thank you so much for the follow. Like I said, it's the podcast stream tonight, apparently, so, I mean, I'm not gonna lie, I definitely do a lot of talking on my channel anyway. But, not as much gaming this time, so I definitely appreciate you, hitting that follow button. I'm glad that you're enjoying yourself. And everybody, I mean, like we said, I haven't seen the numbers here. We've got a pretty healthy number of people from Jesse Quill's raid still in here, so I know I say it a lot. It doesn't mean I mean it any less. I really like the fact that you guys have given me stuff to talk about, and just the support that you guys are showing in terms of being here and interacting. I always, especially when I go on channels myself, I will, you know, I'll hang out, I'll enjoy myself, but I don't always chat. And in my opinion, you know, the role of the streamer is always to provide the entertainment, right? There should never be an expectation from a streamer that people are going to interact with them. But, so, you know, I always come and I can say, it's like, I have no idea how many people are going to be in chat. I have no idea if anybody's going to talk to me. I always need to prepare as if, you know, none of that's going to happen and I need to be ready to talk to an empty chat room. But I definitely enjoy it a lot more when you guys give me something to talk about. Especially because you guys have also been very... I've clearly said things that are not... There's not consensus for. And, unlike, let's say, the Dota 2 chats that I go into, you've all been extremely respectful and very insightful in terms of the comments that you've made. So it's really nice to have a kind of chat like this, because this is, I mean, to me, this is why I both go to school, but also why I do streaming, because we get to share this hobby and we get to talk about this stuff. So, thanks, guys. Look at the saving this way. If you made 100 books and sold them for 60, you made $6,000, and the cost to make it was 30. In the end, you only have a profit of 3,000. Digital, you can sell more for 100 books, and there's no production cost to maintain. Definitely true. I mean, there is some token costs, but yes, your costs go down. But the part where I need to be convinced that something wrong is occurring is that suddenly, because you are making more profits, there is an obligation to lower the cost of the good. If the value of the good is 60, you know, this is what people are willing to pay because this is what they... You know, this is what they want to buy. They get $60 worth of entertainment out of reading that book. I don't feel that there is an obligation to lower the price of that book. I think there are good business reasons for it, and it's a nice thing to do, right? If you can increase the consumer surplus, you know, if I'm saying is like, well, I'm going to take some of my profits and I'm going to give that back to the consumers in the form that they're going to get a book that they value for $60, but they're only going to have to pay $30 for it. You know, that's nice to do, and it's certainly very kind of somebody to do that. But I can't get too upset at a developer if they say that, you know, we found a more efficient way of distributing games, a way that the consumers want to, you know, get their games. Like, I would not want to go to a store and buy a game, to be perfectly frank. I much prefer using Steam. I don't feel that the developer is compelled to share any of that surplus with me. But again, that is purely my reading of that situation. This is a debate that is a very contemporary one, right? It maybe doesn't quite have the same dimensions as Occupy Wall Street, but in the end, people are asking a very serious and I think a very legitimate question in terms of exactly how much should a firm or should an individual take when we have, you know, a certain level of inequality, or when there's a, you know, when there's some people who are at a certain standard of living. Is it really proper that people are able to, you know, are able to maintain such a high standard of living? Clearly the moral dimensions are very different when you're considering abject poverty compared to, you know, the affluence of something like, let's say, a Wall Street banker or something like that. In the end, you know, when we're talking about video games, we're talking about people who are able to afford computers and also afford to buy games. So at this point, you know, we all have, I mean, I'm a grad student, so I'm not going to say that I'm living particularly high on the hog, but the fact that I have a computer and I'm able to stream gives an indicator that I'm doing okay for myself, all things considered. The fact that I can go to school is already an indication that I'm doing quite well, you know, for myself. Am I doing as well as my friend who works at Ernst & Young? No, I mean, she's definitely, on the monetary measure of life, she is far ahead of me. But like in the end, if we're talking about how much the business should get and how much the gamer should get, I mean, again, to me, if the game isn't worth it at the price, then I just don't buy it at the price. And there's a lot of games that I don't buy because I don't think they're worth the money. Zombie Nerd 47, how's it going? That was a wonderful purple boa. Also, hi. Hi, Limmel. How's it going? So, I should let everybody know that Limmel has a special distinction. He was at the Twitch meetup yesterday, and I had to feel really terrible because I spoke to Miss Ariella through Twitter much longer than I actually spoke to her and said the first word. Aurelian, thank you very much for the follow. Getting late here. Bye, Chalk and Chat. Thank you very much for stopping by, Enclave Fake Soldier. Sorry I couldn't give you a little bit more of an exciting stream tonight, but hope to see you again. If not, I'll probably see you in Jesse Quell's chat. So good, but sad you missed CK2. Well, Zombie Nerd, as it turns out, on Friday I had a power out, so I wasn't able to do CK2. That's entirely on me. Obviously, if I could have streamed, I would, but in this case, I don't, because I've got a very dedicated group of people who watch Crusader Kings 2, I don't want to suddenly disrupt the schedule, especially because I'm in the middle of a war. I don't want to just jump into CK2 and say, okay, for those of you who missed it, go watch a YouTube video or something like that. So you didn't miss anything on it other than the fact that I don't have a good backup plan for when the power goes out. So I apologize for that. My laptop was working, but my cable modem wasn't. So I considered alternatives, but none that would actually allow me to stream. So all I can say is I'm sorry, and I will definitely be sure to be back on Friday with a proper CK2 stream, and hopefully like a good long one to make up for the trouble. Yes, I'm still in the same game. Same set, yeah. For CK2, yes. This is a brand new game for Endless Space. We haven't made that much progress because I'm busy talking about the business practices of games developers. But yeah, so on the point of Limmel, so yeah, he first of all pointed me out to Miss Ariella before, and before she knew I was there, and I thought like she looked familiar, but I only saw the back of her head most of the time, so I didn't want to. Like, I wasn't going to say a tweet, send out a tweet as like, I see the back of your head. And she's like, I'm not even there yet. What are you talking about? But yeah, so I got a chance to see Limmel in person again. And we enjoyed Kappa shots and feather boas. And you can all go on Twitter if you want to see that sort of thing. All hail the Rose Dynasty. Awesome. Thank you, guys. Yeah, and I should say too, Red Pain, like one thing I am doing here, I know people throw around the term devil's advocate when it comes to taking certain positions or something like that. Like, in the end, I am on your side in the fact that if I had my choice, I would want to have better, cheaper games. I think anybody who doesn't want that needs to get their head examined, right? But one thing that I do, especially because I study related issues in terms of what I do in school, I try to consider, what is my individual preference as a consumer, and how do I compare that to what's actually going on? One thing that we do, I'm not going to say that the economic way of looking at these issues is always the correct one to adopt, But one thing that we concern ourselves with when we do economics is the social surplus. And when we talk about a social surplus, that includes both consumer surplus and producer surplus. Because in the end, the people making the games are members of society as well, right? It's very easy, and I know it's a very common argument, and oftentimes it's a correct one. That's like, the consumer needs to be protected and the consumer needs to get more. And usually this is in response to some very corrupt business practices, so I'm on side with those. But the big thing is that when we start talking about where the revenues from a game are distributed, in the end, if the producers made a game that has a $60 value and people are paying $60 for that, an economist will look at that and say, well, that's fine. We're really just arguing about, does the producer get X amount of the surplus or the consumer get X amount of the surplus? And in the end, that's more just an argument in terms of who's the better negotiator. So in that sense, they're a little bit neutral in terms of how the interaction goes. But you and I are consumers of video games, and so we have a very clear idea about who should be getting that surplus. Now, I won't lie, I've got a couple of game ideas that I one day would like to see become a reality, and so all of a sudden, what my ideals are in terms of how surplus is distributed for video game distribution changes quite dramatically, right? I want to make sure that I'm able to capture as much of the revenues from the sale of my product. And there is a certain, expectation that I can have about this. Certainly, I feel that I should be compensated for my work if I produce good work. I mean, it's likely the first game I make is probably not going to be that good, which is why I probably won't release it. But that's where I'm coming from. Again, it's not I don't want to sound too zealous about these positions that I've been talking about here. But I like exploring ideas like these. So naturally, I'll take if I sound a little too pro-business, it's just mostly because it's easier to take that side of the argument. It's not really an argument, but that side of the debate, simply because you're usually not going to have somebody on the. You're usually going to have somebody on the other side of that one. If I'm trying to defend consumers, well, pretty much everybody's going to be on side with that. So I'm pretty much just randomly assigning research at this point here. I'm just researching everything that's under 5 turns. Also, apologies to Ariella for the hangover and my small part in creating that. Oh, could I explain this game a bit? You've never seen it. Absolutely. Oh, and as a former Flagship Studios employee, I think that would have served us well, that and spending more time bug testing. Yeah, first of all, I didn't know that you worked in Flagship Studios, so thank you for your service to this great gaming community, my friend. Zombie Nerd, I'm very happy to explain this game to you. So this is Endless Space by Amplitude Studios. It is in the 4X genre of strategy games, so explore... What is it? Explore, exterminate... expand, and I can never remember the other X. Apparently I only play XXX titles. There's a 4th X which I can't remember, but I'm sure chat is going to provide for me. So the best comparison that you can make is, of course, the granddaddy of all 4X strategy games, Civilization. It's not hex-based, so the sort of individual unit that you have is a star system, and then in each star system you're going to have planets. You will have a population on a planet, which will affect the level of production that you have. Let's forgot we're past midnight, so I got to change my DND sign. Thank you for the follow again, though. So just like in this game, just like in Civilization, the higher the population you have, the more resources that you can work. So you want to manage your expansion in terms of getting onto new star systems. You want to upgrade your technologies and maintain a military, because there are other civilizations in the game. Now, we haven't discovered them because these are wormholes. So in this case here, I need to research a technology before I can actually cross them. But the basic idea here is, in these turns, I am building up my infrastructure so that I can effectively build fleets, build additional research, and just ultimately be able to either conduct war more effectively when I encounter a civilization if I want to go to war, or be able to out-expand my rivals and access star systems before they do. So the best thing I can say is it's civilization in space, but I think they brought enough interesting innovations to this genre that make this a worthy title on its own. Yeah, not a problem, Libble. And also, by the way, if anybody has any questions in terms of the game, I'm definitely... I don't think I'm very good at giving overviews of games, but if you have a specific question about a function or a feature or a strategy that I'm employing, I'm really happy to answer those ones, because I think I'm a little bit better on specifics like that. Explore, expand, exploit, and extract. Exploit, that's it. Thank you very much, Red Pain. I also don't know why they don't call it a 4E title. Because, like, they're all EXs. So I don't know why they decided 4X sounded better than E. So I'll actually give you guys an example here. So we talked about this before, but one of the management things that we're talking for Zombie Nerds benefit. So the four, they're called FIDs, Food, Industry, Science, and Dust. Dust is the currency of the game, so if you've watched or read Dune, it's a little bit like that. So the idea here is that I can manage my tax rate to affect these parameters. So these resources are going to be affected by my approval rating, and my approval rating is going to be affected by my tax rate. So what I can do here is I can adjust the slider. If I have a 100% tax rate, I have strikes all over the place. My science apparently isn't that crippled, which is a bit unusual. But basically, I'm not in a good state. I am generating quite a bit of dust, but I am doing so at the cost of my production. You'll notice that as I move this slider down, some of these parameters are starting to go up a little bit. But what you want to do is you want to find the sweet spot. So like right here at this 20% tax rate, I can use the planet Kura as an example. 21 food, 43 industry, 4 science, and it is actually producing a negative in terms of dust, but that's fine because I've got Quadris, which is generating 13, so it balances out. Now I can try raising this a little bit. We can go to 30% that I had before. I do so at the cost of quite a bit of industry. So I can also take Pisces as a comparison, 35, 47, 12, and 8. In this case here, what I need to do is I need to find a little bit of a balance in terms of the fact that at a 30% rate, Pisces is perfectly happy, but at a 20% rate, I'm actually getting better production on Kura. Now, what I'm going to do here is I'm going to use Kura as the priority because I still have a surplus as far as dust, so I'm still generating more of the currency than I'm losing. But the big thing that's happening here on Kura is I'm producing science generating a star system improvement. And so what I want to do there is I want to prioritize my industry on the planet where I'm actually building infrastructure, in contrast to this place where I'm just generating military units. Because in the end, I don't really have any need for these military units, so they're not as high of a priority as, you know, something that's going to allow me to research technology a bit faster. Again, I do so at the cost of dust. Like, I'm at the point now where I've expanded to a point that I'm not going to make every star system happy, but right now my priority is to get this public-private partnerships improvement built. How many other civilizations? This one... The total number of civilizations this game is something like 10, but on this map, it's a 4-player game. So I don't actually know what civilizations I'm playing against, but I'm playing the United Empire, which is basically, well, as the title says, space capitalists. They're very industry and dust-oriented and have a fairly strong military. What was I going to do here? I'll just put this colony ship to sleep until I can... You'll notice that there's little red dots here. These are just indications of planets that I can't colonize yet. So that's why I've just got this colony ship sitting outside, not doing anything. As soon as one of them turns white, that means I can colonize them, and so I'll move in. Okay, so this is just, I've not really explained this menu that much. That's just because this is giving me a report of things that I've finished and what I'm building next. I've already put these things in the queue, so I should, you know, I presumably had an idea of what I wanted to accomplish when I made that production decision, and nothing substantial has changed in this playthrough, so I don't see any reason to go back to those menus. And again, it's been a really slow playthrough because I don't shut up. So I'm hoping to try and push these turns by a little bit faster, just so we can have something. If we don't have a combat by the end of the playthrough tonight, we'll have at least take a look at some pretty stars. What's the factor that decides if you can colonize it? So if you go to the technology tree, the first one, there's always going to be a basic planet type that you can colonize. I believe it's Terran, so something like Earth, ocean, or jungle. As you research additional technology, you can start colonizing slightly less habitable planets. So, for instance, tundra is going to have, tundra isn't something that you could colonize right away. I'm probably, if the planet was 100% like the Northwest Territories, I would probably need to build some kind of technology that would permit me to survive on that. You can really tell this is a Canadian stream by the fact I referenced the Northwest Territories. Sorry, guys. I don't have a lot of good examples. I have not been to Alaska, so I do not know if they have any good examples of tundra in Alaska. I'm assuming they do, but I paid attention to Canadian social studies, not American. So now there's going to be drawbacks for colonizing something like tundra because it's obviously not as nice to live on as, let's say, Earth. So you get an approval penalty. Now, the deeper you get into the technology tree, the less hospitable planets that you're on. So from tundra, you can then colonize Arctic, which is obviously a more difficult proposition. Byronic shielding, I can colonize lava planets, which obviously no colonist is ever going to say, "Oh, Mom, Dad, please, let's go to the lava planet," But it also, if you colonize a planet like that, you probably have some, you have some pretty big advantages in terms of, specifically for lava, it's industry. But there are things like gas giants where you can get dust bonuses or science bonuses as well. The most difficult planet to colonize is actually an asteroid field, which I don't remember what technology that is actually. But there's a technology that basically the hardest planet to colonize is an asteroid field. So, oh, System Jock, please, let's go to the lava planet. We're working on it. We're the evil empire, for crying out loud. We'll just send people to the lava planet because we can get away with it. The market dictates that people must go to the lava planet. So this is the hero that we said was going to be leading the fleets. So could improve the speed of a fleet, which is helpful, but maybe not as helpful as, let's say, improving their offense. Tactician 1, -6%. Actually, that's I really like this idea of lower accuracy on enemy weapons, because if you think about it, that synergizes reasonably well with the bonus to health that my ships get. So in addition to you have the ability to absorb more damage, but in addition to that, you've also got the damage mitigation in the fact that there are less things hitting, and that's something that scales better as the enemy weapons get better, right? So they could have the worst laser cannon in the world that'll do 1,000 damage to you if it hits, but if it only hits 1% of the time, the expected value of damage to your fleet is not actually that high. So I'm really tempted to go for Tactician. I mean, the defense one would be kind of cool too, but I think I'll actually do Tactician. This is the experimental playthrough. I also can't remember if this guy had a... No, he didn't have any improvements. Alright, so we got our arid epigenetics. This means that we're able to colonize... I think this is the one for... arid planets. Sorry. I thought it was something other than the title, but... So the first thing that you'll notice is we've got a gray dot on some of these planets that we've already colonized. I'm not too interested in those because population will naturally move over to those areas. However, Ingress is now colonizable, and Ingress actually has something special on it as well. It's got a solar farm, so this is actually going to improve the approval rating on that planet. Now, as it is, I built too many colony ships, so I can just move one of them straight over and start moving there. Hive minds are pretty bad for fleets from a sci-fi standpoint, unless other units are also capable of unique thought. If your hive mind commander goes down, your hive mind scatters. It's a really interesting point, actually. I'm assuming this seems like a kind of game that most people who are on, or sorry, a kind of movie that most people who are on Twitch have seen. But the first time I watched The Ghost in the Shell, I wasn't that thrilled by it, and I don't know if I wasn't paying attention or quite what. But I remember watching it again and hearing the motivations behind what I will call the primary antagonist, like the AI, and its explanation about how it's... I mean, effectively what it's looking for the difference between reproduction as we understand it in the digital environment, which is perfect copies, and the advantages that come from sexual reproduction, which will be, you know, the introduction of imperfections. And the fact that this AI sort of knows that it's exterminated if somebody's able to sort of find the right, you know, the right thing after it. For whatever reason, that really fascinated me the second time that I watched that movie. So in this case, like when you're talking about hive minds, that's immediately what my mind turns to, which is if you have this, this homogeneous unit as far as a tactic is concerned, and you find the killer app, you find the way of working around it, then that fleet is toast. Whereas once, the alternative is if you introduce some degree of randomness in, then you improve your chances of survival. This, by the way, is something that is a feature of game theory. So a good example would be a soccer game, or football for those of you who actually like football. It's funny that, we have a special name for soccer, but we don't actually play it that much in North America. But so if you think of a penalty kick, the classic formulation of this will be the goalie can, jump to the left, or the goalie can jump to the right. And if they jump at the same, we'll say for the sake of the argument that it's an all or nothing proposition. So if the goalie matches with the ball, then they're 100% of the time going to block it. And if they go in the wrong direction, then 100% of the time the ball's going to go in the net. So the kicker wants to make sure that they're going the opposite direction from the goalie. The goalie wants to make sure that they go the same direction as the kicker. Now, what you look for in a Nash equilibrium is a situation where there is no profitable deviation. So the classic formulation you'll get from that is the prisoner's dilemma, which you find that it's only when both parties confess that there's no profitable deviation from that. It's better if both of them stay silent, but the incentives are structured such that there's always going to be a profitable deviation, except in the situation where both parties confess. So, for those of you who don't know the prisoner's dilemma, I'm sorry, I spent a little bit too much time building up the framework, so you can probably wiki it, and it's a fairly easy thought experiment if you're not familiar with it. But this idea here, in terms of the penalty kick, you can't find a Nash equilibrium that way, because if you think about it, right? Let's say I think that the kicker is going to kick left, and I'm the goalie. If I'm currently going right, my profitable deviation is to go left. Well, now I'm going left. So what's the kicker faced with? Well, the kicker is faced with the fact that they're not going to get the goal now. So their profitable deviation is to kick right. Well, what happens if the kicker's kicking right? Well, as the goalie, I'm going to want to go right. And you just keep going around and around in circles like this. So this gives rise to what's known as a mixed strategy equilibria, which is that if my behavior as a goalie is that there is equal probability that I'll go left or right, then also the kicker will completely randomly equal 50% chance of going left or right. In that situation, that's actually an equilibrium because there's no profitable deviation from properly randomizing your kind of kick. So in this case here, again, if you have the if you have this hive mind that only employs one tactic, this is almost like a goalie that always goes left. And so as soon as you find out that information, that the goalie always goes left, as soon as you kick right, there's no answer to that. But if the goalie has this level of indeterminacy, you have to change your strategy. So it's not a perfect mapping of that hive mind idea, but I thought it was an interesting application. This is Star Wars and I'm the Sith? Yeah, that's not a bad way of looking at it. Except there's no force. I guess there's dust powers in this game, but it doesn't quite count. AI is perfection in implementation, so it's a continuous loop until an error is made by the other side. Well, in this... Lurgosh, how's it going? I'm doing well. Yourself? It's not necessarily a continuous loop, so the usual idea behind a game theory formulation is that in the case of the... in the case of that soccer match off, it's actually just one game that gets played, but you have all the information that you need, so that, like, you've seen a million kickoffs in your life, you know, against either the same goalie or lots of professional goalies, and, you know, just... you know what the optimal strategy is. Clearly, if two people are playing the game for the first time, or they don't know the rules very well, you can't necessarily make that sort of determination. But that's also not a very interesting situation to analyze, right? In this case, you're not necessarily talking about proper strategies, you're talking about what is the likelihood that somebody doesn't understand what's happening. So that's like me going in and, you know, voting for... I'm trying to think of a good example that's not, like, ridiculously, you know, polarizing as far as politics. That's me going in and voting for a candidate that no sane person would pick, right? It is a legitimate crazy person. And then, for whatever reason, people know that I voted for this individual. And they said, you know, what caused you to vote for the insane candidate? And I said... oh, you know, I thought I was voting for, you know, I don't know, the superstar candidate that has every policy that everybody likes. You know, and in that point, we haven't learned anything interesting about my political decision-making. We've just learned that I don't know how to read a ballot. So... In the case of game theory, by the way, they have actually studied the behavior of football players, like football/soccer players, and they do actually find the most successful kickers and goalies perfectly randomize their the directions that they kick. So this actually has an empirical finding, which is kind of neat. You're good here. Finished your first work on After Effects. Oh, that's wonderful! I didn't know you were learning After Effects. I hope you had fun. What you mean by the continuous loop is that each person will adjust themselves to either kick the ball or block the ball. That's true, yes. They would if they were attempting to find pure strategies because they don't exist, but the equilibrium is to randomize. I think I just let a planet go by without actually improving the production. Oh well. I think they introduced this empire as being kind of inefficient, so... so what I'm going to do here is I'm actually going to start by colonizing this planet. I've got full population here, so what I'm actually going to do at this point is I'm going to adjust the production... I'm going to adjust to industry. And then we will go for the extreme option exchange. I'm actually going to do kind of an overhaul of the empire where I see fit. And I've got my first fleet ready. So similar idea here. We'll colonize. We will build up industry. I've kind of been neglecting these planets. First thing I should do is spend some money upgrading these fleets. You started to learn after your boss asked, and they run out of logos and... Ah, nice. I said the kicker will kick right, the goalie will go right, but... Oh yeah, sorry. So the idea here is that you once you look at the perspectives of each individual, the game is constructed such that one winning necessitates the loss of the other. So if the goalie goes right, the kicker wants to go left. If the kicker goes left, the important thing to hear here is that the decision is made simultaneously. So the kicker runs up to the ball, the goalie starts making their move. And so it's not like I can see what... Like, obviously, if it's a sequential game, if the kicker has to say, I'm going to kick left or I'm going to kick right before the penalty kick, the goalie always wins. So what you do is, because you... Like, it's very hard to think about these things simultaneously in a systematic way. So you say, it's like, okay, I'm going to fix one of these things here. What happens in a world where the kicker kicks left? You know, I'm going to assume this for the sake of the discussion. Say, in the case where the kicker kicks left, the goalie will always go to the left, right? There is a certain response that goalie is going to make. And so I say, well, I'm playing this game as the kicker at the moment, so I know if I always kick left, there's one clear response to that, which is for the goalie to go left. So what happens if I always kick right? Well, again, the goalie's always going to move to the right on that one. There's no dominated strategy. So in this case, I can't automatically eliminate kicking left or kicking right. And so the only thing that I can do is to assign some positive probability between the two actions that I'll take. And in this particular case here, the optimal strategy is to assign an even probability to both of those events. Oop. You went to go get a bagel, and you passed out waiting for the bagel to pop. Come on, zombie nerd, you know. Oh, sorry, you know what? I might have missed, and you meant that the goalie's right is the kicker's left, and so, yeah, they know that. Okay, sorry, I think I probably just missed some of this on here. Yeah, so again, the idea behind the story is that it doesn't rely on errors. It just relies... For the case of this mixed strategy equilibrium, it's just the fact that the optimal strategy for the game is to randomize your behavior. It means that there are going to be some situations where... And again, this is an idealized world, right? Where kickers hit the goal 100% of the time and goalies defend the goal 100% of the time. But the idea here is that the optimal strategy is to put a 50% probability on the direction that you move, because in that case, that's also going to have in that case, the opponent is going to do the same thing. They're going to assign 50% to both of the actions, and if you attempt to do a deviation from anything but that strategy, you're always going to find that you're either going to let in too many goals or you're going to miss too many goals, depending on who you're playing as. That's possible, T. Clark. I guess the reason why I tend to look at at least for my understanding of these concepts, I always thought of it from the perspective of the players, because I'm trying to motivate their actions. But I think my understanding is that we're not confused so much by the directions anymore, just the application of the strategy. Yeah, the big thing here is that the conclusion of mixed strategies is not relying on somebody to make a mistake so much as it's relying on what's the optimal way to play this game. And again, you can say it's like, if I were to do the penalty kick 1,000,000 times, best strategy for me to employ would be half of the time I kick left, half the time I kick right. Or if I'm the goalie, half the time I defend left, half the time I defend right. And again, that's on those strong assumptions, right? That it's perfect. Perfect scoring, perfect defense, my opponent knows what they're doing, things like that. Like, obviously, these are abstractions to facilitate an understanding of the competitive situation. I should stream CSGO, depending on... I'd love to stream CSGO, except that I don't think... I think the high motion of that game wouldn't work very well with my low bitrate. But once I improve the bitrate, I'd be interested. Onlookers should stand directly above the stadium. Alright. I think we're just stuck with building things on here. I guess I can take a look and see if there's any improvements I can make as far as production's concerned. Well, I can get a 41 if I bankrupt my empire, but that doesn't seem like a good idea. It looks like 36 is the best I can hope for. See, okay, so the first thing I would look at is I'd say, okay, so this planet I was looking for before gets 36 industry as opposed to 35 when I go from a... Oh, wait a minute. I go to a negative if I do this, don't I? Oh, no, it's still +4. So the first thing I was looking at is like 36, and then I compare this, and I get 35 here. So I was like, okay, well, maybe it makes sense for me to have this 25. I get the more dust. But the important thing to look at on this one is actually what happens on Pisces. So for my industry, it's 49 going to 52. And then I also get an improvement on food. And I believe, yeah, Pisces still hasn't maximized its population. So in this situation here, it actually makes sense to go at the lowest tax rate because the total gains on this planet are better than the small improvements that I can make on Kara. Like, in the end, this is just a planet that's going to be unhappy. The next science decisions I should make should be ones that are oriented towards improving the approval ratings on planets like that. But right now, I have to work with what I've got. So in this case, I'm going to make the decision that improves my total productivity on the majority of planets. You gotta go, but you enjoy the stream because of all this, and a smart guy, and you appreciate your candor. I'll left you a follow when you read already. Thank you very much. I'm sorry, yours was the one that I butchered on the pronunciation, so let me try it one more time. Cyan Prince 619. It's been great having you in the chat. Thank you for those kind words. Again, Jessie Quill is a great friend of this stream, and I'm learning more so because of the quality of viewers that she is bringing in. You guys have been really generous with your time, so thank you for that. I really appreciate the follow. I see you've got a Tiger Rider emote. That's fantastic. And I look forward to seeing you guys in the stream again. So it's been great having you. I'm going to try and stream as long as I can on this game, but I am starting to feel a little tired myself. So I suspect you may not be missing that much, but we'll keep going through this as much as we can. And as always, if any of you guys have some questions about this game or what we're talking about in general, let them fly, and I can generally make hay with whatever question I'm given. So Yayan, thank you very much, Ace Gaming. I've never seen Dragon Ball Z. No, I'm sorry. I've been disappointing everybody. What did I start off with? I said I haven't played Total War. I said I haven't played any Elder Scrolls game except Skyrim. Haven't played the Fallout games. Haven't watched Dragon Ball Z. What other things? How much more evidence can I get to revoke my nerd card? There's got to be more stuff that I haven't seen that I should have. Saying, okay. But if I'm not leaving, then yeah. Well, I'm here. I suspect. I suspect there's probably more than a few people. So the majority. I should let you know, Lorgosh. There's a streamer, really wonderful streamer, named Jessie Quill, who raided us today, alongside with Superior Blaze, by the way. Doctor Who, Game of Thrones, Walking Dead. Haven't watched Doctor Who. Have watched Game of Thrones. Have not watched Walking Dead, but I do have the video game. Haven't played Total War, watched Dragon Ball Z. T. Clark, brothers in arms, my friend. Thank you. You've defended me. But yeah, so Lorgosh, we had a really wonderful streamer, a fellow Team Panda member named Jessie Quill. She raided us today along with Superior Blaze, and she brought with her, I believe it was 33 viewers, where obviously the viewer numbers are thinning out a little bit, but that was some time ago. And I've been enjoying some chats with some really interesting people, and that's why there's some new faces in the channel here, along, of course, with some long-established faces. We certainly don't forget where we came from. There's some people in this chat who've basically been here since I first started streaming, so that is always an interesting and humbling experience, to say the least, when people have been watching that long. And of course, Torrigen. What? Yeah, maybe I should be explaining not just the streamers who are not here on on Panda, but the ones who are present in Team Panda. Torrigen, who, if I miss, Torrigen, were you playing I think it was CS:GO. I last saw you, right? So assuming that I'm correct, I know Torrigen best for his CS:GO play, so I should actually say Zombie Nerd. I know you're a fan of that game, and some point we need to get one in together. By the way, for those of you who... I'm not doing a good job of maintaining it. I just set it up because it had come up in discussion, but the Steam group is up. There's a link to it down below. I don't quite know how I'm going to handle it yet, but that's the best way. If you want to play a game with me, that's the best way that we can set things up. I do have enough space on my friends list right now, but the last thing I want to do is have people who are in early get kicked off because I'm running out of space. So it seemed that setting up a Steam group was the best way to avoid that embarrassing situation. But with that in mind, I think, Zombie Nerd, you'd enjoy Torrigen's stream. Have a good night. Thanks again for stopping by. Alright, so we've maxed out our labor, which is probably quite timely as well, because we're starting to hit the point where we're building ships because we don't have enough infrastructure to build. So in this case, I'm still focusing on this particular hero as my improvement hero. And in this case, I'm going to be upgrading Wit because that's going to be improving the production of Dust and Science. The Science is particularly good because that will allow me to build more infrastructure, more of these system improvements. And then Dust obviously is helpful no matter what. Like, I don't put a high priority on it when I can't spend it, but that doesn't mean that I have no use for it. So we really seem to be losing our approval on this system. Oh, you've not played in this? Yeah, so this is, Torrigen, I'll say this is Endless Space by Amplitude Studios. I know it fairly recently went on sale, but I suspect during the Steam sale you're going to find that this goes on a fairly hefty discount. I'm really hoping to get into some combat so I can show you what that looks like. But it's a pretty interesting game. If you like Civilization-style games, it's pretty good. I think it's a gorgeous-looking game. One of my favorite features of it is that the combat plays out a little bit like a Battlestar Galactica fight scene. So what you do is you pick like one of three actions during your long range, your mid range, and your short range fights, and then you sort of watch it. It sort of has this sort of handheld camera aesthetic as you see the two fleets take their actions. So it's not a very interactive combat system, but it's a visually appealing way of doing it. So I think they did a really nice job of taking the 4X genre and sort of making it their own, rather than just doing sort of another Civilization clone. Because I noticed that a lot of the Civilization clone style games that I play tend not to, they do not do the format well. They seem to stumble on. It's usually one, like, I mean, the one major appeal of Civilization 5 is you really have this wonderful canvas of history to work with. So that's sometimes missing. I think that's a lot of people's complaint about Civilization Beyond Earth, actually, is that the game feels a little colder because you don't have this immediate relation as you do with historical figures. I'm not entirely convinced by that argument, but again, I'm a little more sympathetic to Beyond Earth than others. But other ones just sort of it's like, if I wanted to play Civilization, I'll just play the Sid Meier games, right? But Endless Space did this really wonderful job of saying, it's like, okay, we know what makes this genre interesting, but we're going to move it in a direction that we think is appropriate to a science fiction game. So I think it's probably my favorite sci-fi styled 4X game. Battlestar Galactica. Dude, I have worked on Battlestar Galactica. It was shot in Vancouver, and I did spend some time as a camera assistant. So I have actually been on the set and have met the actors and went to the wrap party for like the closing episode. Like, so when they closed off the series, I was actually invited to the wrap party for that. I got to see a drunk Edward James Olmos give a big speech about getting the Peabody Award and stuff like that. It's really fun. What rank am I? I'm unranked. I've never played a ranked game in CSGO. Probably, I would say below average, though. It's been a really long time since I played that game seriously. Okay, so right now, Pisces doesn't have full population, and they've maxed out their production. So in this case, I'm going to get them to generate the colony ships. And what I'm going to do now is I'm just going to anticipate my future needs. So I've got 2 places I can colonize right now, Kraz and Thea. And then I'm going to build one more for Regulus. Now, these are all barren planets, so it's close, but I'm still a little ways off from being able to colonize it. But the nice thing is, once I get this 3rd colony ship built, I don't need to worry about messing with my population numbers anymore. So that's a fairly major appeal for me to make that decision. And again, I'm going to have at least one planet that's generating population. Fresh ice for your hand? What happened, T. Clark? Can you come touch me for $1? If you really have to. Working on a movie is one of the least impressive things I think people can do. It's not like I wrote the stories or anything like that. I was a camera assistant, so I was sort of responsible for, ordering and returning gear. If something, basically the extent of my duties was anything that was not touching the camera during filming was my deal. I worked with the first assistant cameraman, also known as the focus puller, and they they're sort of responsible for what's on the camera, and they need to make sure the shot's in focus. And then their boss is the camera operator. And then finally, their boss is the director of photography, who's sort of responsible for the overall visual look of the series. So really nice crew that I work with. Actually, that's not true. There's one other second assistant who I just could not get along with at all. But overall, I was very happy. I met a good friend of mine who is the digital imaging technician on that show. I got to actually... So there's this one... So I haven't seen this episode, but there was this episode where they had like a boxing match, and like they brought in a camera called the Phantom so they could do like a whole bunch of slow motion stuff with that. That was a really neat episode to work on. Doesn't matter, I made it happen. Well, fair enough. And then actually, as a result of that Bionic Woman, that Battlestar connection, I actually worked with the short and ill-fated Bionic Woman series. That one, like, everybody kind of knew the writing was on the wall. So that one was kind of interesting because we were at Whistler, which is like a ski resort near Vancouver, for sort of the last episode, and like, again, the show is clearly not going to be picked up again, right? Like, it's, we'll just take our money. I think there was like a writer's strike about to happen. Like, this is a million years ago. But like, basically, I got along quite well with the camera operator, and like, they were running really far behind on the schedule, and they still needed to get like just scenic shots for the, for the movie. So the camera, we're just, it was, I had so much fun on that particular day. Because like nobody cared, everybody knew the thing was done. So yeah, you're gonna be unemployed afterwards. You're gonna have to find a new show, and probably you're not gonna have a lot of shows because the strike's coming up. But you know, like it is what it is. You're gonna enjoy the time. You know, maybe you'll have some time off. I had enough money set aside that I wasn't too worried about finding a new job straight afterwards. But basically, there's this little splinter group that we formed, just like me and camera operate. I don't even know if we had a focus puller or not, but in any case, like we just go into a van, and our job is just to go all around the roads of Whistler, just finding these really nice scenic shots to use when you're like cutting away to something else. And we're using these nice proper film cameras, like it was a big budget TV show. And the camera op, we kind of set up a shot, and we're looking around. The camera operator, we're talking in the van, get along with each other, and he kind of looks to me and says, "Hey, you want to shoot this one?" So I mean, like second assistant cameramen are generally, they work a really long time. They move up to focus puller, which is like the most fired job on a film set. And then, those guys sometimes move up to become camera operators. So like, my expectations are the only time I'm going to be like looking through the lens of a camera are to either make sure it's not broken, or, on an independent film where, no proper professional cameraman is going to work at those wages. So I am not accustomed to working with such expensive, like that camera had to be $1 million. Like it's a rental only thing, so nobody can actually buy them. But that camera must have had $1 million worth of things on it, plus the value of the camera itself. But I got to, for some of the shots, I got to set them. I mean, he took a look through the lens. He doesn't want the dailies to come back and they're like, "What the hell were you thinking when you shot that?" But he takes a look and gives me a nod, and he's worked the second job before, so he takes care of that. And I got to shoot a few shots on this beautiful, expensive camera in a really scenic location. So, and again, like we weren't near the directors, we weren't near anybody else associated with the film. So it's just an opportunity for a bunch of camera nerds to do the thing that they like the most. I mean, it wasn't a very successful show, and it was a really stressful show to work on at times. But that's definitely I think it was like one of the last shows I ever worked on, but I definitely have very fond memories of that day. So what happened to you to make the ice? Let's hear the story about the ice, or the hand, T. Clark. Pirates? Okay, so I can't beat this pirate ship, so in this case I'm just gonna run away. I could have manualed it, but let's do something exciting. This colony ship's probably screwed. Maybe not. Have a good one, Zombie Nerd. Thanks a lot for stopping by. And we will do CSGO. It's actually, tell you what, I don't know what's going to happen with this research project, but I don't think I'll play any ranked CSGO games, but I'm going to make it a point to fire it up sometime this week. I'm going to kind of shake some of the rust off. And, I mean, if you're online, I'll send you a quick message. Or otherwise, I'm gonna get myself back in the game on CSGO. I think it's been a little too long, so everybody talking about it kind of makes me want to jump back into the fray. But it's great having you here again, as always. It's really great to see people coming back. All right, I guess I promised comp. You know what? Let's not worry about the nerdy science stuff. Let's just start cracking head. Oh. I have to worry about the nerdy science. So this industry is kind of a priority for me right now. That's 3 turns. You know what? Honestly, for 1 turn, that's also worth it. 1 turn. More food isn't that high of a priority, but I should also do Applied Casimir Effect. No. Okay, cancel all of that. First thing we're getting is Botanical Scanning, so I can get my approval rating up. Then Industry... I think I'll just get the 1 turn stuff out of the way. And then... Applied Casimir Effect. I think I'll just clear out the 3 turn stuff. I was sort of setting myself up for the next few turns worth of... So the one drawback with this is that my fleet size is going to expand very rapidly. Which means I'm going to actually need to build up some ships afterwards. So what I've done, I've specifically structured it this way so that my technological improvements as far as the actual construction of the ships, those get done first, so that I don't fill my fleets with outdated equipment that I then need to spend money to upgrade. But unfortunately, I am still a little bit behind the curve as far as getting my fleets in the state that I want them to be in. I'm not even going to bother min-maxing this stuff. I think I should probably just... I should be focusing a little bit more on getting that technology researched. So I'm not going to be colonizing lava or asteroid belts anytime soon, so any food production is going to be wasted. So at this point here, I'm going to switch to industry, and then I'll start with the Extreme Option Exchange just because that gets me more money. I'll do Cisort Satellite. I would consider getting the Stealth Construction, which is basically improving my defense. Again, I don't expect to be invaded, but I also don't want to be completely defenseless. But in this case here, I'm actually going to hold it off because in 6 turns, it's possible there might be a better improvement that I research. Not really much to tell. Screen on your Android tablet got broken, and you may have gone outside and punched your car a few times, as well as a brick pillar. You have a temper. Well, I mean, I have actually... My phone has a big cracked screen because of a... basically some construction on campus, so I have sympathy. I didn't quite react as actively as yourself, but I'm glad you can at least have a... if not a sense of humor, at least perspective on this. So, all right, Torgen. The thing I was hoping to show all of you. We get to see what combat is like for this game. So, I mean, a 656 power fleet versus an 83 power fleet. There's really no way for me to lose this. But let's just take a look at how this thing works. They actually have beam weapons, which is a worry for me. Because I don't have any beam defense. I've got kinetic defense. I've got 84 for deflection versus their 44 kinetic attack. So I don't have a lot to fear from their short-range weapons. I have a lot to fear from their long and medium-range weapons. The beam weapon is actually fairly accurate at long range, very accurate at medium range. So I have no defensive systems to handle that. So what I'm going to do instead is either try to mitigate that damage through dodging. I don't believe I have any... Oh, I do have minus 15 accuracy. So I could use Barrier, which is 50 armor points. Again, that's just attempting to improve defense. What I'm going to do here is I'm going to do the negative 15% accuracy on the opponent. Although my block suffers for it. And then I get 10% accuracy on long-range weapon, but I don't have a long-range weapon. So this one is just sort of saying I'm going to get nailed by these beam weapons. This is more saying I'm going to do what I can to mitigate the beam weapons. So I'm going to do that for the long and medium range, and then I'm going to make him pay as far as his kinetic defense and his... Like, he has no defenses at all. And... I'm basically, once I get to the short range part of the battle, I'm done. And basically I'm going to hit him hard with everything. His beams aren't necessarily that scary. They're 39, so I don't know. I mean, one thing that I need to consider about is what his option is going to be. So, you know, when we're talking about ideal strategies as far as games are, these games are concerned, if I expect that he's going to play something that counters sabotage, so in my case, if he was going to play engineering, I would not want to play the Sabotage card. So I'm thinking, well, is he possibly going to play Sabotage? Probably not until he reaches the close range part. So in this case here, I'm going to try this strategy, and I'm going to do manual just so you guys can see what the combat looks like. I'll see if I can turn the volume up a bit. I won't change the camera or anything, I'll just let it naturally run by, although I will keep my mouse over these so I can change the strategy if something adjusts. So our action here was to do an overclock. I'm not too worried about that because that only affects their kinetic weapons. So I've taken a little under half damage on one of my ships. Oh, and we wiped out the pirate ship the first round, so that kind of sucks for showing combat, but GG. It's kind of what it looks like. Not the most exciting. There's 3 phases to this, but it's kind of neat. What's really nice is that they added 2 new music tracks to the combat. So, like, there's different classes of ships that you can build. So you can have this, like, massive flagship, and then, you know, sort of your medium-range carriers, and you can have, you know, fighters, and basically you can have this really interesting fleet composition. And I don't know if they've specifically designed it, but definitely it feels like they've created the game so that when you know you have 2 very large fleets going against each other, you have much more sort of lower end strings, a little bit of a more deliberate tempo, just a very, you know, it is a very large piece of music that gets played to kind of fit the scope of that particular fight. So I definitely get really excited when I have 2 big fleets going up against each other, because you get a feel for the epic scope of fights like that with the music. Have you checked out Endless? I have checked out Endless Legend. I haven't done too much with it because I don't quite know what's going on in that game. The tutorial leaves something to be desired, in my opinion. Oop, don't want to change the name of the fleet. But I do actually want to play it. I want to play it more. The biggest problem I've run into is that when I do the combat in that game, like, I seem to have armies that are very well equipped and shouldn't have problems, and then when I go into the combat scenes, I just get completely wiped out, and I'm not quite sure what I'm doing wrong. So I'm hoping to maybe check out some Let's Plays on YouTube, or just generally put some quality time into the game so I actually know what everything's, like, what's going on, and then I'd like to stream that as well. So I own it. I actually own, like, the Emperor Edition or whatever it's called. It's a really good-looking game, but I'm running into the same problem with it that I had with this game, which is I feel like the tutorial is underwritten, and I'm feeling a little bit lost in terms of formulating a good strategy for that game. So this is just some basic stats on the game. This is actually, it's neat. Once you get, so I noticed, like, the first time I played Endless Space, I didn't pay a lot of attention to the screen, but once I started formulating strategies and starting to think a bit about how these actions work and things like that, this information can be useful. So, you know, my effective damage is 503. Well, not that surprising, because I think it tells me the, you know, 450 HP, so clearly I did enough to destroy it. That's not news. Average weapons efficiency, 12%. Now, I could be, oh my god, that's terrible, but I'm like, well, this is a fleet that's entirely kinetics-based, and they didn't get past the first phase. So I don't, you know, I'm not going to cry myself to sleep over that. Average defenses efficiency, 80%, so that's a fairly good rate. I am going up against lasers, so not a lot to worry about that. Best defense deflect, well, that's my only defense, so that doesn't mean anything. Apparently their effective damage, maybe this is the other way around, where they did 503 damage to me and I did 656 to them. Either way, it's enough to destroy their fleet, so. Average weapons efficiency, 60%. So that's roughly about what you expect for a beam level at all. So that suggests to me that my this battle card did not actually do what I intended it to. Best weapon beam, that's fairly sensible because the kinetic weapons are only good in short range, and best defense they didn't have any, which is why that's blank. So if you're employing different strategies, this screen actually gives you some pretty good ideas in terms of whether or not your fleet is working the way that you intended. Right now I'm just using kinetics only, so which is a terrible strategy once you start playing against humans, because they will... I mean, honestly, when I play the game against my friends, I generally assume that they're going to have kinetic-only fleets because that's the default option. Can you just point out that Amplitude seems to have some weird fixation on things being endless, endless space, endless legend, dungeon, the endless. I think they watch too many Never-Ending Story. Yeah, I mean, we were talking about this a little bit earlier. You know, the story of the planet of Auriga and this lore about the Endless. I don't know if they had the success of Endless Space. Like, if you listen to the voiceover on the opening, the opening, not credits, but like the description of your faction, it's the same voice that they use for the Endless Legend trailers, which I thought were beautifully done. And so, you know, in some senses, I think they are trying to tell this larger story, which centers around this special planet Auriga. Dungeon of the Endless very clearly is suggesting that the first civilization on some iteration of Auriga was the people who had crashed on the planet, and there's suggestions that they were very specifically crashed onto that planet by somebody with an ulterior motive. Now, I don't know if they started adding this lore. I mean, obviously they had some of it in place because of the Endless in the first version of this game, and then some of this stuff about Auriga got added in with subsequent updates. I don't know if they always wanted to tell this story, or if just the success of Endless Space led them to say, okay, well, let's make Endless Legend, let's make Dungeon of the Endless, these sorts of things. But they're telling a pretty consistent story in these worlds, and it's one that's fairly interesting. I haven't gotten a ton, like, I don't read a lot of the lore in Endless Space, but it's it's interesting enough. I really like the trailer for Endless Legend. I really like the narration that they have for that. So I'm a little bit more interested, and I'm paying a little bit closer attention now that I've noticed that. And of course they're using the same voiceover actor for both of them, so I'm trying to find out quite what the relations are. Okay. You know what, guys? I'm sorry to say this, but it's actually an hour later than I thought it was. So I'm going to save the game at this point. I'm going to... Okay, apparently I just saved a screenshot for it. Good to know. So I'm just going to call UE, United Empire. So I'm going to save that. We will come back to this game later. I should notice, if you want to play in the same galaxy as me and show that you're better, the generation seed is 831353352. And, tell you what, guys. Before you go away, I'm going to do an impromptu giveaway as a thank you for everybody who's stopped by. And this giveaway is not going to be anything too substantial, so... I'll give you guys the option in terms of saying whether or not you want to keep it or not. It's going to be I believe I have a gift certificate for this game. So if I don't, I'll definitely, I have something I can give away tonight. So it's definitely going to be something, but I need to make sure that okay, I guess I have to put some music on now. I got to get myself set up, and I don't want to be showing any codes unintentionally. So I just ask for a bit of your patience. You don't have this game or any in this game? Yeah. So I should clarify for you guys, I unfortunately do not have a copy of the game itself. What I have is a pretty steep discount for this game, which I believe I can give away. So I realize it's not, it's kind of a crappy giveaway, but it's what I got. So I was talking about the battle scene music, so let's throw some of that on. As a fan of Endless Wonders games, you're most drawn to Endless Legend. I actually have Age of Wonders 3 on this computer. It's a neat one. I gotta play that more often. Maybe I'll put that on stream, actually. Okay, yeah, so I've got 50% off Endless Space. Let me just take a look at what it costs. Oh, you know what? There's no way I'm going to be able to get this done. So let me just make sure that I can gift it. And we will do a giveaway for a 50%. Again, I want to clarify, this is not for Endless Space on its own, and obviously this is my giveaway. Twitch doesn't endorse it. But for those of you who are considering on buying this game, half off is a pretty decent rate, and I have no benefit whatsoever for this, this game I already own. So. Alright, as much as I like that song, I gotta give you guys your giveaway. So, this is Locke's giveaway tool. Again, this is my giveaway, not Twitch's. Unfortunately, I can't get rid of this bar, but these are the names who are in. This is automatically given to... I'm giving it away to anybody inside the channel, so I've already loaded you in. I'll load it one more time just to make sure everybody's accounted for. And... if you don't want it, just let me know. I'll do another draw again. But this is for a 50% off Endless Space. All right, Lorgosh. So the other requirement I should have mentioned is I would like it if you could say something in chat if you've won it. So, Torgen, this is available from Lach's website. So I got to close this down so I can bring up the timer. Lorgosh, if you would like this, do you want the coupon? Let me, just give me a second here. I'm going to bring Vengeful Spirit back up. Let me just find the best way to give this away. Logrush, could you please send me your Steam name? Just if you could give me a private message on Twitch. Just give me your Steam information so I can add you. Alternatively, just try and add me on the list, and I'll bring you on, and I can give you the coupon that way. I think that's the best. And while I'm just waiting for confirmation that we've got that, I'm gonna find somebody to host tonight. Okay, I got somebody that I'm going to host today. So this is probably somebody who's familiar to a lot of you, but it's going to be Alaskan Savage. One of the reasons I'm picking him is because he's playing Fallout 3. I know we were talking about Fallout a little bit earlier today, so he seems to be a good one to host. So I want to take a minute again. Thank you to everybody who stayed from Jessie Quill's raid. That was really generous of her, and you guys were extremely generous with your time, with talking in chat, giving me something to react to. I hope you guys really liked Endless Space. It's been a while since I played that. That was not the most exciting playthrough to go through because I was setting up my empire. I'm glad we could get a little bit of combat in, but I'm really happy that so many people had not spent a lot of time with this game, so I was able to show a game I thought was interesting. Congratulations again to Lorgosh, and we will send you off to Savage. I'm going to try and stream later this week, but failing that, it will be Friday night. We'll do Crusader Kings. Until then, have a great night and enjoy the Alaskan Savage Man. Oh yes, and I will definitely check out Homeworld. Have a good night, guys.